Chapter 978. The one-eyed wolf was ready. It held the dragon thorn and walked to the side. It looked at Zhou Kuei and asked, "Do you want me to tie you up? Or do you want to hold on tightly?" There were magic ropes on both sides of the scaffold for restraining the torturer, mainly for fear that the torturer would faint. If he was tied up, he would not fall down even if he fainted. Of course, he could hold on tightly without being tied up. Zhou Kuei was a brave man. He knew that he could not avoid this punishment, so he gritted his teeth and said, "No need to tie me up." He was an individual cultivator with a strong body. Although he had heard of the dragon thorn, he was confident that he could withstand such a punishment. Saying so, he stepped forward and took off his shirt, revealing his strong body. He grabbed the magic ropes on both sides of the scaffold and gritted his teeth. "Come on." Seeing him like this, the members of A5 cheered him on. "Captain, hold on." "No problem." Zhou Kuei snorted. "Then you have to hold on." The one-eyed wolf walked behind Zhou Kuei, grabbed the wine gourd and drank a mouthful of wine. It sprayed the wine on the dragon thorn and whipped down. With a loud smack, blood splattered out from Zhou Kuei's back, and even a piece of flesh was exposed. Zhou Kuei's whole body stiffened as if he had been struck by lightning. His head was raised high, and his eyes were wide open, almost popping out of their sockets. His eyeballs were instantly covered with blood vessels, and his expression became extremely ferocious and horrible. After maintaining this posture for a full 3 breaths of time, an earth-shattering scream came from Zhou Kuei's mouth. He realized that he had overestimated the power of the reverse martial king. That thing must have only caused damage to the physical body, which he could still withstand. The key was that the spiritual treasure not only attacked the physical body, but also the divine soul. When the whip lashed out, he felt that his divine soul was about to be torn apart. All of the law enforcement hall cultivators who saw this scene had solemn expressions on their faces. Seeing the reaction of the dragon thorn before being tortured, they realized the horror of the reverse martial king. They thought that they would be whipped by that thing later. They were trembling. Another whip fell on the ground. The one-eyed wolf was punishing the boy outside, so it naturally knew how to make it more painful and how to extend the pain to the extreme. For someone as confident as Dragonthorn, 1 whip every 7 breaths was the best rhythm. Bai Yu's screams came to an abrupt end. She held her breath for a while before she screamed again. Clap, clap, clap. The one-eyed wolf turned a deaf ear to him and punished him according to its own rhythm. After several lashes, Dragonthorn suddenly fell to the ground. He had already fainted. Although he was unconscious, his body was still twitching. "Captain!" The members of Team A7 cried out in alarm. The others didn't feel the same way. Even a body cultivator like Bai Yu could only withstand a few whips before fainting. Among the people present, there were a few whose physiques were comparable to Dragonthorn, so who could withstand it? "I still have to tie him up." Seeing this, Lone Wolf lifted Dragonthorn up and swiftly tied my hands under the rack. My whole body was hung up. However, I didn't continue the punishment. Instead, I walked behind Dragonthorn and drank a mouthful of wine. Then I spat it all on my face. Since it was a punishment, it naturally had to be carried out when the person being punished was still unconscious. Otherwise, the effect would be reduced. "Look at Han Hu with your small eyes," Qian Yudang suddenly shouted. However, no one could bear to look away from Dragonthorn's miserable state. They were probably afraid that he wouldn't be traumatized. After all, no one could escape from King Eniwu's cruel beating. Bai Yu, who was in a coma, slowly woke up. "Can you still withstand it?" the one-eyed wolf asked. Dragonthorn gritted his teeth. "Come." "Ah." Almost as soon as Dragonthorn finished speaking, the whip lashed out again, and Dragonthorn's voice turned into a blood-curdling scream. After a while, the 10 whips finally ended. The group of people felt relieved, as if they were the ones being punished. Only then did we understand the cruelty of the punishment prison. In this kind of situation, even if we only watched other people being punished, this bitter scene was enough to be engraved in our minds for the rest of our lives. If something happened again last time, if we dared to violate the way law again, 7 more whips. Dragonthorn's body was almost soaked with sweat, and there was a lake of blood and flesh in front of his back, but he still gritted his teeth. Qian Yuding laughed. "What? Are you addicted to being punished?" De Ling is a man, so he should be punished in front of the crowd. I will take the punishment for you. Please allow me to do so, Dragonthorn said. De Ling was the male practitioner in my team. Hearing this, Zhang Cheng's face turned pale instantly. With me, there was only one male practitioner in Dragonthorn's team, but there were only 2 in my team. In other words, I definitely had to take the punishment for someone. There were 70 whips which could kill someone. Aloud, Qian Yudang said and winked at the one-eyed wolf. After another 7 whips, Bai Yu was released. The male practitioner called De Ling quickly got down and helped me back. Even though Dragonthorn was an individual practitioner, he didn't feel weak at the moment. Zhang Cheng was still thinking about the 70 whips, but Zhou Kuei and Geng Xiaoling stretched out their hands and held my arms. With a little force, they threw me on top of the punishment rack. Qian Yuding laughed heartily. I can see that your men are very enthusiastic about being punished. Since that's the case, One-Eyed Wolf, please satisfy me. The One-Eyed Wolf nodded seriously. Master, I have spoken. If there is a problem, please. Yes, you. Zhang Cheng couldn't defend himself. He turned his head and glared at Zhou Kuei and Geng Xiaoling. You are finished with them. Geng Xiaoling looked up at the sky, while Zhou Kuei looked down at his feet. They both had an expression that said it was none of your business. Zhang Cheng's cultivation was higher than Bai Yu's, and his body was even stronger than mine. After the punishment, he fainted 8 times. When the 17th whips came, Zhang Cheng was completely awake. The one-eyed wolf even spat out wine to wake me up. Master, if you continue, I'm afraid he will die. The one-eyed wolf looked at Qian Yudang. Qian Yudang really wanted to beat someone to death. He only wanted to use this punishment to teach those people a lesson. He opened his mouth and said, remember these 7 whips first. When my injuries are healed, call me back to receive double the punishment. The members of Team D1 felt as if they had been pardoned and hurriedly carried their captain up. You do it. Geng Xiaoling stepped down. Bai Yu also wanted to compete with me. There was no need to compete. Anyway, she would experience it sooner or later. After getting down, she took off her clothes and grabbed the rope under the punishment rack to stabilize her body. Tantan said, Mujing's 7 whips, I will take it for you. A moment ago, Geng Xiaoling was punished. Among the 8 people who were tortured, my performance was the best. Although I screamed, I didn't faint and even walked back on my own. However, when she saw the bloody scene in front of me, where my bones could almost be seen, Mujing held back her tears. Out of the 7 captains, 8 were dealt with, leaving only Zhou Kuei. I took off the Scarlet Dragon battle armor and exposed my lower body. Quietly, I walked to the torture rack. My eyebrows drooped and my eyes drooped. Qian Yudang coughed heavily. Luya, after the punishment, do you have anything to say? Zhou Kuei thought for a moment and said, today's matter, you are not wrong. Master, you are a lowly person. We should imitate you and remember you. That's it? Qian Yudang stared at me. Zhou Kuei calmly looked back at him. Qian Yudang's eyes flashed with a hint of pleading. Only then did Zhou Kuei realize, oh right. You will take Lin Yinxiu's 7 whips for you. Qian Yudang breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't know that the big guy was deliberately teasing him, but there was nothing he could do. Start the punishment, Qian Yudang said. The one-eyed wolf immediately lashed out with its whip. Zhou Kuei only felt a burning pain on his back, as if he had been struck by lightning. But he almost didn't feel the pain of his soul the next time. In my perception, the moment the reverse martial king lashed out, an invisible impact spread toward the deity's lake. But it was blocked by the double dragon sea protection. In the deity's lake it was fierce. Before I could react, I screamed out loud. My scream was even more miserable than the other 8 people. Pa pa pa. There was no rhythm to the lashing, and Zhou Kuei's screams were getting lower and lower. But what surprised everyone was that although Zhou Kuei screamed miserably, he didn't show any signs of fainting. Bai Yu was the one who was about to faint. The one-eyed wolf's way of waking up the prisoners was to spit a mouthful of wine in their faces. I was willing to try it. After 17 lashes, Zhou Kuei grimaced in pain. His back was seriously injured, but his condition was much better than the other 8 people. Qian Yudang frowned slightly and looked at the one-eyed wolf. It seemed that even if he was merciful because of Yinxiu, it was so obvious. The one-eyed wolf deserved it. Compared with the punishments of the other people, I was merciful, but I knew what I was doing. In my opinion, Zhou Kuei should have fainted at least 2 or 8 times after receiving 17 lashes. But Zhou Kuei kept his body in the lake. Recalling the next punishment of Zhou Kuei, the one-eyed wolf was more certain that the big guy named Luoye's divine soul was more tenacious than other people's. Otherwise, he could have withstood the power of the reverse martial king. The 7 captains had been punished. They sat aside and took elixirs to heal their wounds silently. But they were still separated. Zhou Kuei and Geng Biue were in the same group. Dragonthorn and Zhang Chang were in the same group. All that was left were their respective team members. The one-eyed wolf slowed down the punishment of its team members. When they were whipped one by one, they were all beaten badly. Many of them fainted on the spot. It wasn't until less than an hour ago that the punishment began. Except for a few male cultivators who were intact, the rest of the young cultivators who were sent to the prison were all injured. Zhang Chang was the most miserable one. He was punished with 7 lashes. Every time he thought about it, he was in so much pain that he almost died. Qian Yudang looked at the group of soldiers under his command who were sucking in hot breaths and suppressing their pain. He said resentfully, as members of the law enforcement hall, they should lead by example. This is only their first offense. I will punish them accordingly. Do they accept this? Who dared to accept it? If there is no next time, I will punish them myself, Qian Yudang said and waved his hand. Get out. Chapter 979. A group of bare-chested men walked through the dark tunnel and stepped out of the prison. The sun was high up in the sky, and the bone-chilling coldness dissipated a lot. They couldn't help but feel like they had just escaped death. This experience was destined to be remembered by many for the rest of their lives. They would definitely stay away from this damned place. Zhou Kuei and Zhang Cheng led their team members and quickly left. Before leaving, Zhou Kuei didn't forget to glare at Lu Yi. Yi, I've implicated you this time, King Gengwu said. Lu Yi looked at the direction Zhou Kuei left and slowly shook his head. I still don't know who implicated who. What do you mean? King Gengwu was puzzled. That Zhou Kuei should be after me. I went to his Zhou clan 2 days ago and captured someone. Lu Yi explained. Originally, he also thought that the cause of this incident was because King Gengwu couldn't control his temper and caused a conflict between several teams. But when Lu Yi found out that the guy he fought was called Zhou Kuei, some things that he didn't understand suddenly became clear. When the conflict broke out, he rushed to help, but Zhou Kuei stopped him immediately. At that time, Lu Yi felt that something was wrong. This guy was a 9th-order True Lake Realm body cultivator, so it didn't make sense for him to target him. In that situation, he should be watching King Gengwu. But if this person was called Zhou Kuei, then there was nothing wrong. When he captured Zhou Wang in the Zhou family, the Foreign Affairs elder Jose had mentioned Zhou Kuei's name to him. He probably wanted him to give him some face and let Lu Yi go. However, how could Zhou Kuei possibly know a martial king? Yes, he had accepted Jose's gifts. Furthermore, he had barged into the Zhou clan's manor and taken Hebei under the noses of the Zhou clan's cultivators. The news must have reached Hebei's ears. Then today's incident wouldn't have happened. Maybe the original conflict between us and the 8th A8 team was part of the trigger. But this King Gengwu definitely wanted to take the opportunity to teach me a lesson and vent his anger. It's just that I didn't think that I would be able to beat me in a contest of physique. In the end, I was taught a lesson, but I was taught a lesson instead. Geng Zhouwang knew that there were no twists and turns here. Hearing Zhou Kuei's words, he grinned and said, "Anyway, it's not like that. Who cares who is implicated? After all, we suffer together. Let's go to the clinic to heal." There were no medical cultivators in the law enforcement hall's team. Because there were relatively more medical cultivators, there was a way to ensure that every team had a medical cultivator. Therefore, there was no clinic. If the cultivators coming and going to Vast Sky City were not injured, they could go to the medical hall for treatment. All the expenses would be borne by the state guards. In addition, when the medical cultivators treated the injuries of the soldiers, they could not be punished with military merits. Hebei of course knew about the medical center, but she had been there before. She heard that there were only a few beautiful medical cultivators from different sects in the military province. Of course, there were no female medical cultivators either. As for the medical center, it belonged to the Medical Affairs Division. The Medical Affairs Division was the department that managed and deployed all of the medical cultivators that the State Guard didn't have. The medical cultivators overseeing the various small mountain passes at the rear were all under the Medical Affairs Division's direct jurisdiction. Under the guidance of Geng Zhouwang, a group of people came to the medical center. There were a lot of cultivators coming and going. Cultivators had to fight in the city, so it was normal for them to be injured. Even if their injuries were healed, there might be some hidden diseases left. Naturally, they had to go in and out of the medical center often, either to heal their injuries or to adjust their body's hidden diseases. The medical cultivators in the medical center found it strange. After leaving the medical center and showing their guards' badges, no one came to settle them down in the big rooms and wait for treatment. Zhou Kuei crouched under the bed, revealing his bloody back. Brother Lu sat beside him and asked with concern, "Captain, does it hurt?" Of course. Zhou Kuei was annoyed. For the first time, he found that it was not a good thing that there were no male cultivators in the team. Even if it was something else, he would suffer less from the defiant dragon thorn. Brother Lu stuck out his tongue and said, "Don't take the punishment for him this time. You can do it yourself." Hebai didn't want to talk to him. Qin Yudang was right next to them. How dare I take the punishment for Brother Lu? Besides, it was reasonable for a man to be punished like this. The women's backs were all bloody. If a man went down, according to the one-eyed wolf's ruthlessness, he would be merciful. As they were talking, the door was pushed open. A male cultivator came in and bowed to Hebai. "Greetings, senior fellow apprentice. I, Lin Yinxiu, from the medical department, was ordered to come here to treat you." Zhou Kuei raised his head quickly and looked down. A face that he hadn't seen for a long time appeared in his eyes. "Hey." The man saw Hebai's face and was surprised. "You Xiaodai? Sister you." Zhou Kuei also smiled. "It's really a small world. I didn't expect to see him outside." The man called himself Lin Yinxiu, and it was the Lin Yinxiu that Zhou Kuei knew. It had been a few years since they parted in the Evil Moon Valley. Both of them had just been rescued by the Grand Sky Alliance. One had only opened one aperture, while the other had opened two apertures. Now, one was at the True Lake Seventh Order, while the other was at the True Lake Realm. As for which Cloud River realm they were at, Zhou Kuei couldn't tell at the moment. A few years had passed and the changes were very small. Lin Yinxiu obviously realized that the person who came to treat was not Zhou Kuei. She seemed to be very useful. "Why is Yu Xiaodai in Grand Sky City?" Before she finished asking, she reacted. "We said that there were not many teams fighting in the law division. As a result, they were all taken to the punishment prison to be punished. Yu Xiaodai was also. You are also one of them." Hebai sighed secretly. It was true that good news spread far and wide. Even a place like the medical department didn't hear about it. Presumably, the whole Grand Sky City knew about it. It must be these people. Lin Yinxiu was annoyed. "Yes, Hebai Liang is really amazing. He didn't even join the law division. You heard people say that being in the law division is very prestigious." Zhou Kuei didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Sure enough, men didn't pay too much attention to the same things. He opened his mouth and said, "Being awe-inspiring is awe-inspiring, but it's too much. Doing things that offend people is difficult to bear grudges against. This is related. If he was injured last time, he would come to the medical department to find you. You can treat him." The two chatted, and Big Brother Lu, who was watching the show, suddenly said, "Junior sister, if you continue to treat Captain, my blood will run dry." Lin Yinxiu exclaimed and apologized with a red face. "Yes, Hebai Liang, you forgot." Saying so, she quickly sat by the bed and took out some healing materials from her storage bag to treat Zhou Kuei. "You remember that junior sister joined the 100 Flower Valley?" Zhou Kuei asked casually. "Back in the Evil Moon Valley, I went against Peng Xiaohai's suggestion and chose the Blue Blood Sect. Lin Yinxiu chose the 100 Flower Valley." "Yes," Lin Yinxiu replied. Lin Yinxiu replied, "You haven't heard much about Yu Xiaodai in the past few years. Many of the senior and junior sisters in the valley worship Yu Xiaodai very much. When you know that you know Hebai Liang, you are very envious." What he heard was also a good thing. Zhou Kuei smiled. "That's right. You only heard about how powerful Yu Xiaodai was. Even now, his nickname is still circulating in the Spirit Stream battlefield. There are also few stories about him in the Cloud River battlefield. She paused and said, "You Xiaodai must have had a hard time in those years, right?" Others only saw the glory in Zhou Kuei's name, but it was hard to imagine the bitterness and hardships behind it. Lin Yinxiu's thoughts were obviously too similar to others. When you heard these inspiring stories, you could imagine what kind of good environment Zhou Kuei had been in. It was okay, Zhou Kuei answered casually. The hardships were gone, but the rewards were less. Lin Yinxiu treated Zhou Kuei while chatting with me casually. She was obviously in a bad mood. Brother Lu sat quietly to the side and also interjected. Half an hour ago, Lin Yinxiu said, "Yu Xiaodia's body is weak. His injuries look light, but they aren't minor. He'll be fine after 2 days to change his medicine." Zhou Kuei got up and moved his muscles. He felt depressed and praised. Junior sister's skills are good. He Bai Liang smiled sweetly. Medical cultivators can only help them do that. It's fine as long as Yu Xiaodai doesn't like it. After a pause, you opened your mouth and said, "For those like Yu Xiaodai, who is constantly on the move and often fights with others, his body may not have some hidden injuries. If he comes to the medical hall to find you one day when he is free, you can introduce him to a true lake-stage senior martial sister so that you can help him treat his hidden injuries." Okay, Zhou Kuei answered cheerfully and put on his clothes. After a while he let He Bailiang out. In the inner corridor, 8th senior brother was waiting. The 8 people gathered. After bidding farewell to Lin Yinxiu, they flew towards the courtyard. Just as they landed in the courtyard, they saw the chief's figure. Hu Pe and Yi were also waiting there. Before Qian Yudang appeared, Hu Pe had already slipped away. Qian Yudang only saw him. He could always punish a monster. Among those who didn't participate in the fight, only Hu Pe didn't escape. One tribulation. The 8 people quickly bowed. The chief looked at the 2. "Did you suffer?" Zhou Kuei said. 8th senior brother suffered a big loss. You fought back. The chief nodded with satisfaction. It's fine as long as you're injured. Rest well for the next few days. You'll have to run around. Yes. The chief didn't come to see the 2. Seeing that they had something to do, he left. He quickly came down and asked with concern. Zhou Kuei naturally said that he had something to do. He didn't want to make her worry. The next few days were very exciting. Zhou Kuei's injuries recovered very slowly. After all, without the foundation of the broken origin of the dragon soaring realm, his vitality was strong. No matter how light the injuries caused by the defiant dragon thorn were, they were only flesh wounds. When the one-eyed wolf punished them, it would hurt the muscles and bones of He Bai and the others. During this period, He Bai went to the medical hall to change his medicine. He also knew that it was Lin Yinxiu who spread the news of his small name, which attracted the young medical practitioners to come and watch. It was very cold. The monthly salary for that month was paid. He also handed over the explosive fire spirit stones that were less than the next time. The few battle merits that he had left were finally replenished. Zhou Kuei immediately went to buy a tracking disc as a backup. He was going to use it to carry out missions again. If he used the tracking disc to carry out missions like this, the cost would be too low. It was a long-term plan. Chapter 980. During his recuperation period, Lu Yi had nothing else to do other than imprinting the soaring dragon realm's source. Other cultivators spent more than half of their life on cultivation. Their powerful cultivation was accumulated bit by bit in this kind of boring and silent cultivation. Only in this way could they have the enviable glory and glory of others. Lu Yi had just advanced from the 3rd Order True Lake Realm to the 5th Order True Lake Realm, so he didn't plan to increase his cultivation for the time being. The main reason was that it wasn't always a good thing to increase one's cultivation too quickly, as it would cause one's foundation to be unstable. His foundation would be firmer if he spent more time in his current realm. After another imprinting of the soaring dragon realm source, Lu Yi slowly opened his eyes and examined his gains. A moment later he turned his head to look. Hu Pe was lying on the side snoring loudly. Looking at his posture, he should have eaten a monster core. A golden vortex spun in front of Yi, and pure and rich spirit energy poured out of it for her to refine and absorb. Ever since Lu Yi obtained the Stealing Heaven's secret cultivation method, Yi felt a sense of crisis because Lu Ye's growth speed had increased again. and it was ridiculously fast. Originally, when she cultivated with Wuxia, she could barely keep up with Lu Ye's pace. However, after Lu Ye advanced to the true lake realm, the gap between them grew bigger and bigger. So these days, whenever she had free time, she would cultivate. This little girl had a secret stash of money. She had her own battlefield imprint, so naturally she had her own merits and battle achievements. She could use all the cultivation methods that cultivators could use. Seeing that Yi was cultivating seriously, Lu Yi didn't disturb her and tiptoed out of the door. The courtyard was quiet and only half a figure could be seen. Xiao Xinghe and Lin Yinxiu's doors were tightly shut, and it seemed that they were cultivating. His spirit energy rushed to the sky and prepared to pay a visit to the sect master. However, when he reached the sect master's courtyard, he saw the old man's figure. The sect master had recovered and was now in the elder group. Naturally, he wasn't as leisurely as before. Standing in the sect master's courtyard, his spirit energy was suddenly at a loss. Then why did he suddenly have something to do? He had to find something to do. How could he be so leisurely for so many years? His spirit energy pondered for a while and didn't have any ideas. He hurriedly rushed back to his courtyard, found an empty room and left. He sat down cross-legged, immersed his mind, and observed the talent tree. Now the talent tree had begun to show its scale. Small pieces of leaves were burning under the tree, especially the piece where the fire phoenix's land leaf was. At first glance, it looked as if there was a beautiful fire phoenix squatting under the branches. Up until now, Lu Yi had not activated nearly 70 of the talent tree's leaves. Every single one of them was of great use to spiritual energy. They were either used for cultivation, battle, or support. It can't be said that I didn't have the achievements I have today, but I did have the innate tree technique. I have practically memorized all the land leaves by heart, and I also know the uses of almost all the land leaves. Apart from a little bit of Ling Shi, because there was no target for her to use it on, I only have one other land leaf left, which I know the use of Chongqian. He immersed his mind and observed where Lu Yi was under the talent tree. Twin lotus flowers on a stalk. Before Lu Yi had activated that land leaf, his spirit energy had used it a long time ago, but it didn't have any effect. Just like now, with a thought from Fanya, the land leaf of the twin lotus flower appeared in his palm. However, other than looking like a lotus flower, there was nothing ordinary about it. Perhaps that land leaf was meant to be used under him? Just like the rainbow phoenixes flying together. This was a land leaf that required 2 people to activate. With that thought in mind, his spiritual energy returned to his room and pulled out Wuxia, who was snoring away. Wuxia was still sleeping soundly. It wasn't that it was alert enough, but that it could sense Fanya's aura even in its sleep, so it naturally didn't wake up. If it was someone familiar with Wuxia, they would have startled it if they got close. Bringing Wuxia back, his spirit energy pressed one hand on Wuxia's head and activated the spirit pattern, forming the twin lotus flower under him. Spirit light shone brightly, and the shape of a lotus flower immediately appeared under Wuxia's head. It was still effective. Wuxia didn't react at all, and his spirit energy didn't feel anything either. From the looks of it, his previous thought was wrong. That land leaf was meant to be used under someone else's body. It was effective under his body, and it was also effective under someone else's body. Where else could it be used? It was more reliable to use it to set up a formation or to strengthen the Pan Mountain blade. Spirit energy frowned and thought hard. How long had it been? A cowardly idea suddenly popped up in my mind with a thought. The spirit pattern surged, and the yin-yang 7 elements quickly climbed onto the surface of my body, tightly wrapping around my entire body. My body swayed, and immediately, a figure that looked exactly like me appeared beside me. It was as if a layer of underwear had been taken off. Just like my main body, it also maintained a cross-legged posture. Shadow clone. Lu Yi had used his spirit energy when he was being chased by Lu Yuemei, and it played a big role, causing Lu Yuemei to mistake it for a low-level shadow clone technique. In actuality, it was just a shadow created using spirit patterns. Because it didn't have the support of spirit patterns, it could only be maintained for a short period of time. Furthermore, with the resplendent spiritual light, it was very difficult to distinguish the real from the fake. Thus, it couldn't be used to confuse the enemy's line of sight, and thus buy time for himself to escape. Of course, it was also wrong to use it in battle. When the battle was intense, the sudden appearance of a shadow clone would definitely play a miraculous role, causing the enemy to be on guard. Until now, this was the first time spirit energy had encountered an enemy that he had to fight hard against. The people I encountered were either completely my opponent, or I was completely their opponent. Naturally, there was no need to use shadow clone. Lu Yi, the twin lotus flower, had a way to be used under himself, and also had a way to be used under others. It could also be used to set up a formation or in battle. Could it be used under his own shadow clone? The reason why he suddenly had that idea was because of the name twin lotus flower on one stalk. The name Fanya wasn't without its name. For example, sharpness, when activated, it couldn't make the Pan Mountain blade sharper. For example, defense, when activated, it could become a defense. Twin lotus flowers on one stalk, born from the same root, only a twin lotus on one stalk could be called twin lotus flowers on one stalk. The main body and the shadow clone were twin lotuses born from the same stalk. I raised my hand and pressed towards the shadow clone. Although I hadn't used it yet, spirit energy didn't feel weak at all. This time I had found the right direction. My small hand pressed under the shadow clone, and the spirit inscriptions were activated, forming the twin lotus leaf. The moment the leaf was formed, spirit energy suddenly had a strange feeling. Originally, the shadow clone was formed from my spirit inscriptions, so I couldn't control it. It was just like how Imperial equipment was special. Apart from this, there wouldn't be any other part of it. But at this moment, I felt as if my senses had extended to the shadow clone. It was a very strange feeling. While I was thinking about it, a sudden change occurred. At the location of the source aperture, the talent tree suddenly began to shake uncontrollably. Following that, a visible root extended out and retreated towards the location of the Bingdi lotus flower, piercing into the split shadows. Spirit energy was startled. I didn't think that such a change would occur. I calmed my mind and quietly observed the changes. Just a moment ago, spirit energy's face sank because I felt that the talent tree was crazily pouring its blood chi and spirit inscriptions into the shadow clone. I hurriedly calmed my mind and controlled the talent tree. Fortunately, everything went smoothly. Under my control, the talent tree stopped absorbing my energy. Just a moment ago, a lot of blood chi and Fanya were poured into the shadow clone. When spirit energy focused on it, he was a little surprised. This was because the phantoms that were originally formed by spirit tattoos had become less real than before. Moreover, I could vaguely feel that the connection between my body and the phantoms had become closer. It was as if the phantoms were really an extension of my body. I hurriedly checked my body. I discovered that I had only used up some blood chi and spirit inscriptions, but it didn't affect my foundation. Calming my mind, I thought back to what had just happened. Spirit energy had seen through the mysteries of the twin lotus flower. I couldn't help but feel excited because things were definitely as I thought. This twin lotus leaf was definitely the most mysterious leaf I had ever come into contact with. With the thought, the talent tree stopped absorbing my main body's energy and poured it into the shadow clone. After that time, without spirit energy's control, the process of absorbing and pouring energy into the shadow clone was much smoother. The shadow clone became more and more real, as if it really didn't have any flesh. A moment ago, the shadow clone completely solidified. The talent tree's root in the shadow clone's body also broke at that moment. Then, the root floated in the shadow clone's body and turned into the shape of a lotus flower. Hoopa didn't know when it woke up. Its pair of tiger eyes stared in shock at spirit energy's main body and shadow clone. No matter how hard it thought, it couldn't understand why it had lost a master the moment it woke up. Spirit energy turned to look at it, and the shadow clone also turned to look at it. Hoopa's fur instantly exploded. It let out a meow and rushed out of the door, disappearing without a trace. "Don't make a fuss." Spirit energy sneered and continued to study its shadow clone. The shadow clone now was completely different from the one it had constructed in the beginning. The shadow clone after that was only used to confuse the enemy's vision, and would shatter upon contact. However, the shadow clone now didn't look any different from a real person. It didn't have any flesh or blood, and spirit energy didn't have any distinguishing features. I didn't have any distinguishing features either. Even the white mole under my arm was an exception. That kind of shadow clone wasn't just a shadow clone, it was a real clone. Perhaps it was because I didn't pour any talent tree's root into the shadow clone's body. The connection between the main body and the shadow clone became closer. Spirit energy was able to sense everything about the shadow clone and could also control me to do whatever it wanted to do. His field of vision also became strange, and everything he saw behind his eyes was two different scenes. Spirit energy didn't feel dizzy and hurriedly closed its eyes. Fortunately, my soul was always in front of me, and my mind was strong. Thus, I got used to that kind of vision in just a moment. Furthermore, I realized that if I focused my mind on either the main body or the shadow clone, the vision of the other body would become blurry. That was a good thing. Chapter 981. The benefits of a strong soul were in all aspects. Just like now, Lu Yi had only spent less than an hour to familiarize himself with his doppelganger, and he was able to multitask, allowing the main body and the doppelganger to do different things, and their vision was no longer affected. Only then did Lu Yi finally confirm one thing. The use of the twin lotus flowers required the clone as the prerequisite. Only by combining these two spirit patterns could its true power be displayed. This could be considered as finding the correct way to use it. After the initial novelty, Lu Yi checked his body. His spiritual power had been consumed a lot, but this was not a problem. It could be easily replenished. His vitality had also been greatly consumed, but it was also not a problem. His vitality was exuberant, so what if he lost some vitality? The only thing that Lu Yi cared about was the broken root of the talent tree. Half of it. For the time being, the talent tree did not suffer any damage from the Shadow Body Island. However, that root was ultimately an extension of the talent tree. It was considered the foundation of the talent tree, so it would not be easily lost again. One or two roots were not a problem, but if one was lost, the power of the talent tree might be affected. The talent tree was Lu Ye's most important foundation, so it naturally could not be damaged. Previously, he had raised it. Therefore, although the clone was not the main body, he still had to be careful. However, if the clone was destroyed, that section of the talent tree would definitely not be able to be retrieved. Himself, Lu Yi could feel that it was very simple to retrieve the talent tree. He only needed to activate the talent tree lord. If he could absorb everything from the clone again. In the future, when he saw his master, he would not have a large butterfly clone. After Liang Meng arrived at the small hall, the faces of the cultivators on duty here smiled when they saw Zhou Kuei. Lu Yi, why did you come here to recuperate? Broken. In the past few days, several teams from the law enforcement hall had gathered to fight. 3 had spread throughout the entire vast Sky City. There were many meetings in the city. Such a matter was naturally discussed enthusiastically. Jiao Ding, looking for the minister, is this lowly one here? Zhou Kuei asked. This lowly one is outside. Brother Lu, please go ahead. When a person comes out, he needs to report. If he needs to protect Daihua, he needs to do so. Hence, Kuei controlled his doppelganger to take a detour and head towards the inner part of the small hall. Then he imitated the small hall. Seeing that Qian was in charge, he cupped his fists and acted like a villain. Okay. Qian Yuding answered and gestured for the noodles to come out. Have a seat first. Jean Fac Kuei had his own objections. I didn't come here to find out if Qian could see through my clone. Although I don't have much confidence in my clone, that kind of thing needs to be verified before I can know. He then sat down at the side with peace of mind. After Qian Yuding finished dealing with his subordinates, he looked at Zhou Kuei. Are you okay? As he spoke, he stood up and walked to the side, brewed a cup of tea and brought it over. Zhou Kuei was flattered and quickly stood up to take it. I have something to do. Didn't you come to see if I have any orders? This was the first time that this lowly servant had personally served tea. Based on the current situation, Qian Yuding clearly saw through my clone's weakness. Otherwise, he wouldn't have pointed it out. Qian Yubao didn't have anything to say. He looked at me meaningfully. Xiao Gao must have misunderstood something. He sat back down and said slowly, next time, what you do next time is wrong. What is it? Zhou Kuei was thinking about what would happen if the clone drank the tea. The clone looked like a body of flesh and blood, no different from the main body. However, it was still a clone after all. No matter what, he would know after trying it out. He then took a sip of the tea. To actually be able to taste the tea, it was quite magical. In terms of perception, when the tea entered the stomach, there wasn't anything wrong. It was just that the clone didn't have a physical body. The tea that was drunk was just stored in the body and there was a way to digest it. Inshio is arrogant. What kind of suffering did she go through? You are unhappy that he is able to take care of you. That brat was spoiled by you and might not have a bad temper. In the past, she needed him to take care of her. Qin Yudang said. Only then did Zhou Kuei understand that I was talking about him being punished for Lin Inshio a few days later. It seemed like the reason why this lowly servant personally served tea today was because of that. Inshio is very obedient. Zhou Kuei casually walked out of the law department's small hall and prepared to pay a visit to the fat elder in the first hunting pavilion. Although the old man looked impressive, after interacting with him a few times, Zhou Kuei could tell that the old man was definitely a Spirit Ocean Realm weakling. However, he didn't know why he was guarding a place like the hunting pavilion. Just as he walked to the entrance of the hunting pavilion, no one walked out. The two figures stood at the entrance, looking at each other with a foot of distance. There really aren't many enemies on the road, Xiangting thought. There was me. That guy I met coincidentally wasn't Lingzhou, who had a fight a few days later. Seeing Zhou Kuei, Xiangting's eyes were spitting fire. Zhou Kuei was indifferent. After a moment of eye contact, Lingzhou suppressed the anger in his heart and said clearly, I will teach him a lesson sooner or later. He then raised his hand and pushed Zhou Kuei to the side. Get lost. After suffering a loss next time, I didn't want to fight with Zhou Kuei in the city again. The taste of the defiant dragon thorn was so good. Zhou Kuei turned and watched me leave. The fat elder's leisurely voice spread into his ears. Bear with it for a while and the wind will be calm. Only then did Zhou Kuei retract his gaze and leave the hunting pavilion. The fat elder looked at me with a smile. Are your injuries better? Everyone wanted to ask about my injuries. I came to take a mission. Zhou Kuei asked. What else can I do? The old man has other things outside. What about him? Does he also take a mission? For now, I'm here to take one, not to visit you. The fat elder didn't understand. Visit you for what? Zhou Kuei said casually. I didn't come to see him. I have taught you a lesson, I will remember it. Zhou Kuei said but didn't do anything. Yes, I poured the tea. It would be a waste to drink it. I will do my own thing. Leave after you drink the tea. Ming, is he okay? Qian Yudang looked at me suspiciously. He felt that Zhou Kuei was weird today. Yes. Xiangting replied seriously. Let him do as he pleases. Qian Yudang was too lazy to care about me. He was also his son-in-law, so why did he care so little? Although I had high hopes for Zhou Kuei, I would remind him. If people didn't have self-discipline, it would be useless no matter how much others said. Rise. While the clone was drinking tea, in the courtyard, Zhou Kuei wore a mask and soared into the sky, heading straight for the city. At the same time, a Xiangting flew out from somewhere in Haotian City. At the bow of the ship, there were no cultivators controlling the ship. In Lu Ye's cabin, the spirit boat was explaining the details of the mission to the other members of the team. This was the first time Team A7 was out on a mission, so they were familiar with the process. In just a short while, Ling Zhou finished explaining and the other members were confused. That mission could be said to be difficult, but it could also be said to be easy. Most of the time there wouldn't be a fight. If they had experienced the mission, they would have been wrong. 200 meters away from Vast Sky City, the cultivator controlling Lu Yi suddenly said, Captain, there is no one following you. Ling Zhou, who was resting with his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes. He got up and walked to the deck. Looking in the direction that the cultivator pointed, he saw a figure flying beside him a few hundred meters away. He looked around and saw that the person was wearing a mask, so he couldn't see the person's face. Ling Zhou frowned. He didn't care too much about it, mainly because the spiritual energy fluctuations coming from the other party was only at the True Lake realm. He subconsciously felt that the other party was just following me and was surprised. But then he thought about how he didn't have a clone today. Moreover, compared to Shifu, Yinsher's creations were even more profound. Didn't Shadow know that his doppelganger would be seen through? In Xiangting's opinion, the clone was the same as the main body. The true lake stage cultivators would definitely think that it was an empty seat that could break through the avatar. As for Spirit Sea Realm cultivators, they would be able to see through it, try it out. Zhou Kuei took out the one will from his storage bag. He threw the clothes to the clone and the clone quickly put on the martial tree. The two figures stood up together and faced each other. Wang looked in the mirror. The martial tree and the retrieval. Zhou Kuei took off the mountain plate saber from his waist and handed it to the clone. The clone took it and left the room. I activated my spiritual energy and rushed to the law division. I took another sip of tea and savored it. Hearing such an evaluation from a woman, Qian Yudang's good mood suddenly disappeared. He wanted to talk to Zhou Kuei too much. I wanted to talk, but Xiangting was too lazy to talk. She just drank her tea quietly. After a while, Qian Yudang spoke. Are you still okay? Am I? He should get lost. Qian Yudang looked at me. Why did he suddenly lose his temper? Zhou Kuei put down the teacup and stood up, cupping his fists. This humble one will enter. The clone was perfect, and Qian Yudang couldn't see any flaws at all. Looking at the entire 4 prefectures, Qian Yudang was also the weakest Spirit Sea Realm cultivator. Even I could see the flaws, so Zhou Kuei thought that no one could see the flaws. What? The main reason was to let him see. This junior will take his leave. Zhou Kuei turned and left. The fat old man who stayed behind could totally figure out what Zhou Kuei was doing outside. After leaving the hunting pavilion, Zhou Kuei stood on the spot and muttered to himself. Then, he turned right and arrived at the law division's small hall. Qian Yudang looked at him. Are you still okay? I finished drinking my tea. Zhou Kuei pointed to the place where he sat and sat back down. He picked up the tea and sipped it again. Qian Yudang looked at me for a moment and said, Big son, if he has something to do, he will go and cultivate. At your age, it is the time for you to withdraw your essence. Don't think that you will be arrogant just because you don't have some cultivation. The most taboo in cultivation is to slack off. Although it was on the way to be safe, I still instructed, be careful. No. Captain. Doesn't he feel that that person's figure doesn't seem familiar? The team member asked. That was what I said, but Lingzhou was still deep in thought. After hearing what I said, Lingzhou suddenly realized that that person's figure was indeed very familiar. At this moment, a person's name popped up in his mind. Louis, yeah? I pointed. Chapter 982. Captain, he's coming. The cultivator controlling the spirit boat suddenly exclaimed in a low voice. This was because the fellow wearing the mask that was originally flying by the side of the boat had turned around and was flying straight towards them. His aura was fierce, and his spiritual power was surging. He didn't come with good intentions. Zhou Kuei shouted, Luya, how dare you? They couldn't figure out what Luya was up to. How dare he attack them so brazenly? Moreover, he came alone. They had fought in the 100 Fragrances house before, and Zhou Kuei had suffered a little in that fight. It also made him realize that although Luya's cultivation was lower than his physical strength was not inferior at all. However, the two sides had restrained themselves in that fight, and didn't use their full strength. There was a gap of 4 levels between their cultivation. Zhou Kuei believed that if he went all out, Luya would definitely not be his opponent. He had been holding a grudge against Luyi for losing face in the courtyard of the 100 Fragrances house, so when he met Luyi in the hunting pavilion, he spat out some harsh words. Who would have thought that before he could find trouble with Luyi, Luyi would come knocking on his door instead? Although he was angry, Zhou Kuei was happy. Luya took the initiative to attack them. If he fought back, it would be logical. Later, when the matter was brought to the department head, he would be able to justify himself. Today, he must teach him a lesson and vent his anger. Many thoughts flashed through his mind. With a roar, Zhou Kuei took a step out of the spirit boat and went straight to meet Luya. His spiritual power and chi and blood surged, forming a thick and solid shield on the surface of his body. His momentum also reached the peak in an instant. At the same time, he punched behind him. Clang, the sound of a long saber being unsheathed was heard. The saber flashed and slashed at Ling Qi's head. The Panshan saber was with the doppelganger. At the moment, Ling Qi was using a spare long saber. Although the quality was not as good as the Panshan saber, it was still convenient to use. The long saber and the fist were in a stalemate for a moment. Wuxia and Ling Qi collided. Ling Qi's expression changed because he felt the sharpness of the saber. His qi and blood and the defense condensed by Wuxia showed no signs of difficulty. He dared to continue the stalemate. Once the defense was broken, he might not be able to take the saber with his body alone. His other fist punched out, but the force was small. When a physique cultivator's cultivation was higher, they would use something to defend Zhou Kuei, such as a shield. This was because when a physique cultivator's cultivation was high, their qi and blood would be vigorous, but their physique would also be weak. By using a physique cultivator's defense, Zhou Kuei would be able to avoid some damage and better protect himself and his companions. However, when one's cultivation reached the level of spiritual power, the defense formed by qi, blood, and leaves was no match for Guang's defensive magic artifact. For body cultivators have a weak bodies weak, so they would use their weak bodies. Therefore, body cultivators with low cultivation levels would often use defensive treasures. If they could only rely on their weak physique, then using any kind of Guang would be useful. In the face of the seventh punch, the spirit weapon turned a deaf ear to it. The long saber in its hand pressed down, and Lu Yi, who was already berserk, flared up even more. Under the long blade, a spiritual light flashed. Double-peak sharp spirit tattoo. Ling Li's expression changed because at that moment, I could clearly feel that my defense had been torn apart. The long blade had left a bloody wound under my fist, so deep that my bones could be seen. Ling Qi's body was weak. If it were any other cultivator, their entire arm would have been cut into 7 pieces. Intense pain swept through him, but Ling Qi's expression was calm. He pushed aside Ling Qi's saber, and the momentum of the 7th punch was reduced. My fist hit Ling Qi's chest, but it didn't affect me much. A defensive spirit rune blocked the power of the punch. Although the defensive spirit rune was intact, it still weakened a small part of the punch's power. Ling Qi put away his saber and got into a fighting stance. The spiritual energy in my body instantly sent chills down my spine. For a moment I didn't have the illusion that I was in a starry sky. Then specks of light covered the sky and attacked me. There were so few specks of light that I didn't know how to deal with them. Fortunately, I had a lot of combat experience. Facing this kind of danger, I quickly curled up and crossed my arms to protect my vitals. Chi-chi-chi sounds could be heard as blood spurted out. Guang's body slowly fell to the ground, and the ground below him was filled with large holes caused by the piercing arrows. "Captain!" Exclamations could be heard. Figures rushed out of the spirit boat. They were the members of the 7th team. We originally wanted to intervene. After all, our captain was a 4th-order True Lake Realm cultivator. In the War Province, unless Guang Jie came, who could do anything to me? But they never thought that their captain would suffer such a small loss in just a short exchange. They couldn't hold back anymore and rushed out. In the air, the spirit artifact chased after Ling Qi's falling figure. His saber kept slashing down. Even though he tried his best to use his spiritual energy to protect himself, the long saber enhanced by the twin sharp spirit inscriptions was incredibly sharp. Coupled with his spirit artifact, with his current 7th-order True Lake Realm cultivation, there was no defense above Wuxia that he couldn't cut open. Every time the blade landed, a new wound would appear, and blood would splatter everywhere. After all, Ling Qi was a profound body cultivator. Although the spirit artifact could break my defense, it would still take a lot of effort to kill me unless it used its divine sense. What's more, the spirit artifact didn't have the intention to kill. After an hour, I didn't even have the thought of making things difficult for Ling Li. I knew that because of Zhou Wang, Ling Li didn't hold a grudge against me. The conflict in the 100 Fragrances house was very likely directed at me. However, I didn't suffer any losses this time, so the matter was over. I, a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator, had always been petty and never held grudges. But Ling Qi said that he would teach me a lesson sooner or later. Since someone wanted to teach me a lesson sooner or later, of course I would teach Ling Qi a lesson. I knew that Ling Qi didn't have the heart to resist during the slashes. However, under the storm of attacks from the spirit artifact, he couldn't resist at all. He could only try his best to protect himself. Hong! My spiritual energy landed heavily on the ground. and both of my feet were embedded deep into the ground. The huge impact caused my legs to go numb, and I secretly exclaimed in my heart. Looking up, I saw the spiritual equipment that had chased after me and was about to kick me. I hurriedly raised my hands to protect myself, but it was too late. Guang's kick was full of power. It hit my cheek and sent me flying dozens of meters, leaving a muddy footprint on my face. It was only then that the members of Team A7 caught up and attacked the spiritual tool. The spirit weapon was already caught off guard. Before it kicked out, it had already soared into the sky and rushed towards the nearby area. Along the way, it left behind a burst of unbridled and wild laughter. The members of the A7 team split into two groups. One stayed behind to take care of Guang, while the other 7 chased after Ling Qi. However, after a short while, they saw Ling Qi's figure and could only return resentfully. At this moment, Ling Qi was leaning against the trunk of a small tree. His clothes were dyed red with blood, and his body was full of wounds from being stabbed and slashed. The flesh and blood around these wounds were twisted, and it was a hideous and terrifying sight. There wasn't even a muddy shoe print on his face, which made him look awkward and funny at the same time. Compared to the wounds on his body, Guang's injuries were worse. I, a 4th Order True Lake Realm body cultivator, was actually beaten by a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator. Moreover, I was beaten so miserably. My face was as pale as the bottom of a pot. The members of the A7 team looked at Ling Qi's miserable state and were filled with righteous indignation. Spirit Sea Realm cultivator, this guy is too much. Captain, we can't let this go so easily. Yeah, Captain. Attacking a colleague is a serious crime. We definitely won't let this go so easily. The few of them were shouting at each other, and Xiaobu looked like he wanted to immediately bring the spirit tool to justice. This person is wearing a mask. They also saw my face. Who can be sure that I'm not a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator? Suddenly a voice sounded. It was the FA Xiao in the team. In the A7 team, I've always been the think tank. When we carry out missions, I'm the one who gives advice to young master. I'm deeply trusted by Ling Qi. The same figure and the same cultivation. It's not enough. Moreover, you heard that Spirit Sea Realm cultivators use knives. This person also used a knife just now. The FA Xiao shook his head slowly. It's enough. The figure is small and there's no one there. As for the cultivation, it's not necessarily true. There are always some methods that can't be concealed. If this person is really a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator, then my strength is too terrifying. Crossing 7 realms and teaching their captain a lesson like teaching a lesson. Was this really something a 7th Order True Lake Realm cultivator could do? Hearing the FA Xiao's words, the few of them fell silent. Originally, they thought that the attacker must be Guang Jia, but now they couldn't be sure. The main thing was that crossing 7 realms to defeat someone with a lower cultivation was too unbelievable. But if it was definitely a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator, then who could it be? This isn't a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator. Ling Qi, who had been silent, suddenly gritted his teeth and said, although I also saw the attacker's face clearly, the close combat was enough for me to determine the attacker's identity. The FA Xiao frowned slightly. He agreed, but since the captain didn't make such a conclusion, I didn't say anything else. I just asked, Captain, what do you mean? This matter can't be forgotten. Guang stood up and looked in the direction of Grand Sky City. Let's go back to Grand Sky City with you. You have to tell on me in front of the minister. That time I did suffer a small loss. I was taught a lesson to the point that I couldn't fight back. My body that had just recovered was severely injured, and I had to rest for a few more days. But if a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator dared to do such a thing, then don't blame me for retaliating. Just as one of the team members said, attacking a colleague was a serious crime. Once it was confirmed that Guang did it, I would lose a layer of skin even if I died. Although a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator was wearing a mask, I suspected that the minister didn't have the ability to verify this matter. After Liu Ye's mask, the crime of a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator would be hidden. Captain, the FA Xiao said solemnly, please reconsider this matter. After all, he suffered a loss today. If the minister finds out, it won't affect his reputation. Chapter 983. If today's incident wasn't Liu Ye's doing, it wouldn't be a big deal. The law enforcement hall had offended many people in the past few years, so it was inevitable that some people would secretly hold grudges against them and wait for an opportunity to vent their anger. But if it was really Liu Ye's doing, what would the law lord say? Zhou Kuei, a ninth-order True Lake Realm body cultivator, was beaten by a fifth-order weapon cultivator. What's more, it happened right under the noses of the other members of the A5 squad. If this news spread out, it would make the A5 squad look incompetent, and Zhou Kuei, the captain, would lose all face. Zhou Kuei's face became gloomy and uncertain for a moment before he decisively said, "Return to Grand Sky City." As long as he could punish Liu Yi severely, what did losing face matter? Inside the law department's main hall, Qian Wudang looked at Liu Yi speechlessly. Does this tea still have any taste? Liu Yi had already drunk 3 cups of water. He didn't hold back and refilled his own cup after drinking it. It's okay. Qian Wudang rubbed his forehead helplessly. If you like this tea, you can take some back. Many thanks, sir. Liu Yi quickly thanked him. Heavy footsteps came from outside, and a short while later, a sturdy figure stepped in, wrapped in a bloody smell. Qian Wudang looked up and saw Zhou Kuei's miserable state. His face suddenly sank. What happened? From Zhou Kuei's appearance, it was obvious that he had been beaten up by someone. Moreover, the perpetrator had even used a spirit weapon. The fake wounds on his body were obviously caused by a sharp weapon. The most conspicuous thing was the large shoe print on his face. It looked extremely comical. It was obvious that he had been kicked in the face. Zhou Kuei was a True Lake Ninth Order cultivator, so it was very likely that someone in the Spirit Sea realm had beaten him to this state. Qian Wudang subconsciously thought that some Spirit Sea realm cultivator in Grand Sky City had attacked Zhou Kuei. In the end, Zhou Kuei was still a soldier under his command and had performed well in the past few years. Even if he had made a mistake, it should be him, the law department's law lord, who should punish him, not someone else. Your Excellency, please uphold justice for this lowly one. Zhou Kuei cupped his fists and spoke in a low voice. He tilted his head slightly and put on a look of extreme shame. This lowly one was ambushed 200 kilometers away from the city. Who did it? Qian Wudang asked coldly. He was furious. Sneakily attacking the soldiers under his command was unacceptable. He made up his mind. No matter which warrior of the Spirit Sea realm did it, he would make them give him an explanation today. Beating his soldiers was the same as slapping Gan Wudong's face, slapping the law department's face. How could such a thing be tolerated? Louis Zhou Kuei grit his teeth and spat out this name, the look of humiliation on his face becoming even more obvious. After all, he was a ninth-order origin realm cultivator and had to admit that he had been beaten by a fifth-order Liu Yi. But as long as Liu Ye was punished, it was worth it. Qian Wudong was stunned. He looked up and saw Liu Yi sitting on a chair not far behind Zhou Kuei with a teacup in her hand. When their eyes met, Liu Ye's face was blank. Who are you talking about? Gan Wudong frowned. Liu Ye, the one who had a conflict with me in the 100 Fragrances building a few days ago. When did it happen? Qian Wudong asked again. 10 minutes ago. What the hell are you talking about? Suddenly a familiar voice came from behind. 3-3 the sound of footsteps rang out, causing Zhou Kuei to turn around and see Liu Yi standing up with a teacup in her hand. Why are you here? Zhou Kuei's eyes spat fire. When he came in just now, he was so focused on complaining that he didn't notice someone behind him. Why can't I be here? Liu Yi snorted and put the teacup in his hand on the table in front of Qian Wudong, cupped his fists and said, Sir, Zhou Kuei is slandering a fellow officer. Zhou Kuei raised his hand and grabbed Liu Ye's collar, saying fiercely, It was you, don't think I didn't notice. Liu Yi didn't resist and just turned to look at Qian Wudong. Sir, you saw it, he even tried to attack me. How dare he act so presumptuously in front of Sir? Please allow me to teach him a lesson on behalf of Sir, and teach him the rules of our law department. Let go. Qian Wudong shouted with a sullen face. Zhou Kuei didn't dare to disobey and quickly let go of Liu Ye's collar, apologizing, Sir, please forgive me, I lost my composure. This bastard has gone too far. Liu Yi raised his hand and flicked his wrinkled collar, standing there calmly. Qian Wudong looked at Zhou Kuei and said in a low voice, You said Liu Ye attacked you 10 minutes ago? Yes, Zhou Kuei replied solemnly. I had just received a mission from the hunting pavilion and led my team out of Vast Sky City. When I was about 200 li away from Vast Sky City, this guy suddenly appeared and caught me off guard. Division Chief, please take a look at my injuries. They were all caused by this guy. This guy is so lawless and dares to secretly attack and kill his colleagues. He is simply too daring. Please investigate this matter thoroughly. I don't know what you're talking about. Lu Yi snorted coldly. How dare you say you didn't do it? Zhou Kuei turned and glared at him. Don't think you can fool Sir just because you beat someone up and came here. Sir has sharp eyes and can see the truth. Of course it wasn't me. Lu Yi looked at Zhou Kuei as if he was an idiot. I know you suffered a loss at my hands a few days ago and you're angry. You're waiting for an opportunity to take revenge. But you don't have to resort to such despicable means. He then looked at Qian Wudong. Sir, this person is slandering me for no reason. Please uphold justice for me. Qian Wudong was annoyed by their argument and looked at Zhou Kuei. Did you see him attack you with your own eyes? Zhou Kuei said. He was wearing a mask when he attacked me, so he didn't show his face. However, his figure and cultivation were the same. I fought with him at close range for a short while and was sure it was him. It can't be him, Qian Wudong said. Zhou Kuei's anger turned into shock, and he looked at Qian Wudong in confusion. He stayed here for the time it takes to burn a stick of incense and drank 3 cups of tea. If you were really attacked before that, then it couldn't be him. Zhou Kuei was dumbfounded. If it was someone else who said this, he wouldn't believe it. However, it was Qian Wudong who said it, so he had to believe it. That's impossible. Zhou Kuei shouted. The person who attacked him was Lu Yi. How could it not be him? If it wasn't him, then who could it be? Zhou Kuei was confident that he wouldn't get the wrong person in such a close fight. Do you think I'm lying to you? Qian Wudong looked at Zhou Kuei coldly. Zhou Kuei shivered and quickly said, I wouldn't dare. Suddenly, he thought of something and turned to Lu Yi. If it wasn't you who attacked me, do you dare to swear on Tianji Oath? If he swore on Tianji Oath, then all lies would be judged. Why? Lu Yi sneered. With Qian Wudong as my witness, I need to swear on Tianji Oath. If you don't swear on Tianji Oath, then it's you. You've done too many bad things and I don't know who taught you a lesson. Why do you have to slander me? Seeing that Zhou Kuei was about to say something, Qian Wudong slammed the table. Enough! Both Zhou Kuei and Lu Yi stopped talking. This department lord said it wasn't him. Zhou Kuei, stop arguing. Zhou Kuei opened his mouth but eventually nodded. Yes. Was it really not him? But if it wasn't him, who could it be? At this moment, Zhou Kuei's heart couldn't help shaking. Thinking about it again, Lu Yi was just a 5th-order cultivator. If he really was that strong, then in that short confrontation, Zhou Kuei had been beaten to the point where he couldn't even fight back. This wasn't something a 5th-order True Lake Realm cultivator could do. Could it really be a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator who had concealed his cultivation to teach him a lesson? Zhou Kuei's heart sank as he secretly thought of possible candidates, but couldn't think of anyone. While Zhou Kuei's thoughts were running wild, Lu Yi took the opportunity to speak up. Sir, Zhou Kuei took revenge and slandered his colleague. If Sir hadn't testified, I'm afraid this lowly one wouldn't have been able to explain himself. If in the future, the people of our law division continue to make groundless accusations and slander others without any real evidence, how can we enforce the law impartially? In the long run, the law division will no longer have any prestige to speak of. Sir, please punish him severely and uphold the integrity of the law division. You. Zhou Kuei turned his head and glared at Lu Yi. He had never expected that after he failed to lodge a complaint, Lu Yi would take the opportunity to add insult to injury. On top of that, this bastard even tried to use the law division's name to pressure Zhou Kuei. Zhou Kuei immediately had a bad feeling. Qian Wudong glared at Lu Yi. He didn't want to make a big deal out of this matter. In any case, Zhou Kuei had been beaten up this time while Lu Yi hadn't suffered any losses. It was best to turn big problems into small ones and small ones into nothing. But since Lu Yi had said so, if Qian Wudong didn't punish Zhou Kuei, it wouldn't be right. In the end, Lu Yi had indeed been slandered this time, and Zhou Kuei had indeed made groundless accusations. Then what do you think the punishment should be? Lu Yi said in a deep voice, Sir, you are the one in charge of the law division. I only follow orders. Qian Wudong gave Lu Yi a dirty look and scolded him in his mind. Then he turned to Zhou Kuei and said, You slandered your colleague without any evidence. Zhou Kuei, you will be punished with 1 month's salary and 10 lashes in the prison. Any objections? Zhou Kuei didn't dare to raise any objections. He lowered his head like a frosted eggplant. He cupped his fists weakly and said, Yes, sir. Qian Wudong waved his hand. Zhou Kuei turned around and looked a bit lost. It wasn't because he was punished but because he was thinking about something. If Lu Yi really wasn't the one who did it, then which Divine Sea Realm cultivator was teaching him a lesson? The feeling of being targeted in the dark was unbearable, especially when the one who targeted him was a Divine Sea Realm cultivator. Don't go out on missions for a while. Rest well. Qian Wudong reminded him again. Yes. Zhou Kuei nodded. After Zhou Kuei left, Qian Wudong looked at Lu Yi and said, I am satisfied. Lu Yi cupped his fists and said, Sir, you are a fair judge. I will follow your example and follow your example in the future. I will take my leave now. Chapter 984. At the entrance of the Law Department's main hall, several members of the A5 team were waiting. Seeing Zhou Kuei walk out, they hurriedly greeted him. Captain, what did the department head say? What punishment did Lu Yi receive? He'll have to be whipped. The taste of the defiant dragon thorn isn't pleasant. The few of them spoke one after another. Only the law cultivator noticed something wrong with Zhou Kuei's expression and frowned. Captain, the department head didn't uphold justice for you? Zhou Kuei slowly shook his head. It wasn't him. What? Lu Yi was drinking tea at the department head's place for half an hour. It wasn't him who attacked me, Zhou Kuei said. The others were extremely surprised. Who else could it be? Zhou Kuei shook his head. He also wanted to know who it was. While they were talking, Lu Yi leisurely walked out of the law department's main hall with a box of tea leaves in his hand. The members of the A5 team all looked at him. When Lu Yi walked past them, he paused and said, Remember to send your captain to the medical hall for treatment later. The taste of the defiant dragon thorn is... He walked further and further away. The group was puzzled. The law cultivator vaguely sensed something and said, Captain, he means... Zhou Kuei smiled bitterly. The department head said I was spreading rumors and slandering my colleagues. He fined me 1 month's salary and 10 lashes in the prison. Hearing this, the corners of their eyes twitched. Obviously, they recalled the pain of being whipped a few days ago. Captain had just recovered from his injuries, and now he was going to be whipped again. Then it was over. Zhou Kuei returned to his own courtyard. Before he walked a distance, he activated his spiritual core and flew straight towards the law department. I want to try. The connection between my original body and my doppelganger isn't any weaker. Just now, when the doppelganger was in the law department's main hall and the original body went to attack Bao Yun, the two were 200 meters apart. The original body could still sense everything on the doppelganger's side and whether there was any coordination. If there was a problem 200 meters away, what about 700 or 1,000 meters away? A short distance would cut off the connection between the original body and the doppelganger? Zhou Kuei knew, but he would know after trying. He sped all the way towards the law department. Soon Bao Yun noticed another problem. This was not because the Avatar Spirit Core was being consumed. Once the Avatar Spirit Core was used up, there would be no way to maintain it. How could an avatar replenish Bao Yun's energy? Later on, he had considered this problem, which led to the clone being equipped with a Panshan saber. He didn't carry any spirit stones or leaves. He found a heavenly secret business alliance in the distance, borrowed the heavenly secret pillar, and spent some contribution points to buy some Lu Yi. Arriving at a place with people, Zhou Kuei activated the power of the talent tree with a thought. Immediately, roots that could not be seen with the naked eye extended from the center of his palm. They retreated into the leaves and very slowly absorbed one of Bao Yun's spirit pills. He could vaguely sense that the spiritual core in his clone's body had been replenished. Avatars could replenish their spiritual cores. This was to be expected. The foundation of an avatar was the combination of a split shadow and the Bingdi lotus. and the avatar didn't have any roots of the talent tree. Since there were no roots, the talent tree's power could be activated to replenish Bao Yun's energy. Zhou Kuei was pleased. This way, as long as he wanted to, he could maintain the avatar forever. He couldn't even fight with others. As for how much of the original body's strength the avatar could unleash, he hadn't tested it yet. This matter could be put aside for now. He had to confirm the distance first. In the process of flying, Zhou Kuei also tried to activate all kinds of spirit patterns. He found that all of them were easy to use, and there wasn't any difficulty. It seemed that the avatar didn't have all the abilities of the original body, and even a divine ocean realm cultivator couldn't distinguish the real from the fake. Such an avatar was probably beyond the comprehension of the cultivators of the 4 continents. 700 miles, 1,000 miles, 2,000 miles. Zhou Kuei kept flying backward and stopped. He felt that his spirit core had been depleted, so he used the leaves to replenish it. The connection between the original body and the avatar was still as tight as before. It was necessary to try again. Bao Yun didn't feel that as long as they were in the same world, the connection between the original body and the avatar would be cut off. As for what would happen if they were in the same world, there was a way to confirm it. But Zhou Kuei faintly felt that if they were in the same world, if the connection between them would be cut off, it would be easy to say if the avatar could still be maintained. There was a way to try it. The avatar rushed back to Haotian City. The original body was refining the explosive fire spiritual stone. A month's supply would be delivered a few days later. Since he was free now, he naturally had to prepare for the next batch so that he wouldn't have to rush. Moreover, he might use the explosive fire spiritual stone, so Zhou Kuei didn't mind refining less. While he was busy, there was suddenly no sound of clothes fluttering, as if no one had landed in the courtyard. Then a familiar voice came. "Eldest junior brother, you're here." Zhou Kuei was stunned for a moment, but he reacted slowly. He quickly got up and pushed the door open. There were 8 figures standing in the courtyard, 2 women and 1 man. The one in the lead was a handsome man with a head of white hair and close-fitting long clothes with red clouds on a white background. It made him look like an immortal, and there was a small wine gourd at his waist. Just his handsome and confident appearance alone could be found in the entire 4 provinces. It was Xiao Xinghe. On my right, Feng Yuechan looked left and right. On my left there was a tower-like giant armor. His body was as strong as a fierce beast. Hearing the sound of the door opening, the 8 people all turned to look. 7 eyes met, and Zhou Kuei exclaimed in surprise, "Seventh senior brother." The door of the room next to him also opened, and Bao Yunfeng walked out. Then Yi and Hu Po heard the noise. "Senior sister Feng." Yi shouted excitedly and pounced toward Bao Yunfeng. On the battlefield, the 2 men had only been together for a short time, so they were unfamiliar with each other. They hadn't seen each other for several months, so they naturally missed each other. Hu Po followed Yi and rushed toward Giant Armor. Giant Armor reached out and grabbed Hu Po in his palm. After rubbing it, Hu Po closed his eyes comfortably. Usually besides Zhou Kuei and Yi, Hu Po was the closest to Giant Armor. 8th senior brother. Bao Yunfeng looked at Li Baxian and bowed. Li Baxian nodded slightly and looked up and down at Xiao Xinghe. "True Lake." "True Lake," Xiao Xinghe replied. It was because he had reached the True Lake realm that he left the spirit energy battlefield and came to Grand Sky City. "You have to speed up your cultivation. Eldest junior brother's cultivation is too slow. He has left you all behind." "What's eldest junior brother's cultivation now?" Xiao Xinghe asked. Feng Yuechan also looked over curiously. Zhou Kuei slightly pushed his spirit core. Xiao Xinghe was dumbfounded. How did he cultivate? "We only met a few months ago, so how did he reach the True Lake realm?" That kind of growth speed was too terrifying. As early as in the spirit energy battlefield, I noticed that Zhou Kuei's growth speed was very slow, and I was still trying to catch up. But now, it seems that even though my cultivation speed is fast, I am still far behind Zhou Kuei. Feng Yuechan also exclaimed, "Junior brother Lu is really amazing. Even if you came from a 7th grade sect and had seen many outstanding talents, compared to Zhou Kuei, these people were like the light of a firefly compared to the brilliance of the moon. I have obtained a lot of merit recently, so my cultivation speed is a little slow," Bao Yun said while looking in front of them. Feng Yuechan understood and giggled. Is junior brother Lu looking for junior sister Huaxi? Junior sister Huaxi still hasn't come out of the spirit energy battlefield. Even though it was expected, he was still not disappointed. It was the same back in the Cloud River battlefield. Huaxi obviously did not have the ability to break through to the Cloud River realm, but she suppressed her cultivation and cultivated in the 10,000 poison forest. Only when the 10,000 poison forest was about to disappear did she hurriedly break through and retreat to the spirit energy battlefield. Seems that it is the same now. The spirit energy battlefield does not have an environment like the 7 poisons pool, so Huaxi naturally has to make good use of it. Your cultivation method is too similar to that of an abnormal cultivator. Your thirst for spiritual aura is very small. Even the spirit lot is of little significance to you. On the contrary, ordinary environments like the Forest of 1,000 Poisons and the 7 Poisons pool are extremely unhelpful to you. Although you are suppressing your cultivation now, as long as you leave the spirit energy battlefield, your cultivation will definitely increase rapidly. Feng Yuechan said. Junior sister Huaxi wants you to pass a message to him. Cultivate well and protect yourself. Bao Yun's eyes twitched. Don't cause trouble. Feng Yuechan pursed her lips and smiled. There were no stone tables or stools in the courtyard, so they all sat down. Have you gone to pay respects to the headmaster? Li Baxian asked. Xiao Xinghe nodded and said, I just came from the old man's place. If I did, you would know that eldest junior brother lives there. Turning his head to look at Zhou Kuei, he said, Eldest junior brother, the headmaster's intention is for you all to come and seek refuge with him. The old man said that he is now the captain of the law department's disciplinary hall, and there are 8 empty spots in the team. Those 8 vacancies are reserved for senior brother. Eldest junior brother, you're so considerate. I'll thank you here. Xiao Xinghe laughed. When I set off for that place, I was still thinking about where I would be assigned after entering the State Guard. It was only when I met the headmaster that I found out that Zhou Kuei's side still hadn't been assigned. My heart immediately calmed down. Bao Yun then asked about the situation at Huitian Valley's Spirit Land. I learned that a batch of disciples from our sect had advanced in Spirit Qi and retreated to Bao Yun's battlefield. Now, they were cultivating at Huitian Valley's Spirit Land. Most of our sect's disciples were now at the Cloud River realm. Since we didn't have the first batch to advance in Bao Yun, there wouldn't be a 7th batch or an 8th batch. When the time comes, it would definitely be broken. Presumably, our sect would be able to quickly recover in a few years. I had personally built Huitian Valley Spirit Land, and there was no wolf pack guarding it, so there was no need to worry too much. The disciples could cultivate peacefully outside after arriving at Bao Yun's battlefield. When their cultivation improved, they could go out and explore to increase their ability to protect themselves. I had come from the Spirit Qi battlefield alone, so I naturally knew how difficult it was to go out alone. I had experienced that kind of hardship myself, so I wanted to let the juniors who came to experience it again. Has 7th senior brother been to the recruitment department? Bao Yun asked. Xiao Xinghe shook his head. I went to pay respects to the old man as soon as I arrived here. Then I came here before, so I didn't have time to report to the recruitment department. Bring you guys there. Zhou Kuei stood up and called out. He also went to the law enforcement department to report to Qian Yudang. The team members he had been waiting for were here. Chapter 985. He led Li Baxian and the others to the soldier recruitment department, registered them, assessed their military merits, confirmed their military ranks, and received their guard badges. The entire process was a walk in the park. They didn't have much military merits before, so they only received the military rank of Guowei. This was also the military rank that most true lake stage newcomers received. The military rank was related to the monthly salary. Guowei's monthly salary was only 10,000 military merits, which couldn't be compared to Lu Ye's military rank. The monthly salary of Guowei was 30,000, and Lu Yi received double the monthly salary, which was 60,000 military merits every month. This was also the condition that Gan Wudong agreed on when he asked him to be the leader. Lu Yi thought that all the captains were like this, but when he chatted with King Gengwu a while ago, he realized that wasn't the case. In the entire disciplinary hall, He was the only one who received double the monthly salary. He was also the only one who had his own residence in vast Sky City. The other captains didn't even have a fixed residence. Only Divine Ocean Stage cultivators were qualified to have their own residence in vast Sky City. Lu Yi finally understood that the condition that Gan Wudong gave him wasn't set by the disciplinary hall's rules, but by himself. Gan Wudong's intention was to tempt him to be the leader, and then insert Lin Yinxiu into his team. It could be said that he put a lot of thought into it. They had already reported to the soldier recruitment department, and according to the normal procedure, the soldier recruitment department would transfer the new guards to the various mountain passes that needed manpower within 3 days. Thus, Xiying had Xiao Xinghe lead us around vast Sky City, while she slowly rushed to the Law Division's small hall to meet Gan Yudang. She asked Gan Yudang to transfer Lin Yinxiu and the others out of the Law Division, and then transfer them back to her own team. In the small hall, Zhu Jia saw Gan Yudang and stated his intentions. Gan Yudang laughed. He uses people only because of his family. Xiying's team had been lacking 8 people, and seeing that I didn't show any signs of recruiting, Gan Yudang knew that I was waiting for someone. As for who I was waiting for, Gan Yudang was also vague, and only then did he confirm it. Little one, although your 7th senior brother and I have only just advanced to the True Lake stage, each of us has a deep foundation and can fight above our level. Although our cultivation is higher now, given some time it won't be a problem for us to lower our cultivation. Moreover, you're familiar with us, so it'll be easier for you to cooperate with us when we carry out the mission. Qian Yudang nodded and said, You have heard of Pill Heart Sex Lin Yinxiu and Feng Yuechan. You also know about our foundation. This martial king doesn't have any abilities? For him to think so highly of you. Seeing I'm gifted. Do you dare to guarantee that no body cultivator in the same level as me has a weaker physique than me? Qian Yu's expression changed. Really? Of course. Giant Armor nodded seriously. You've seen it with your own eyes. Even body cultivators from first-grade sex pale in comparison to martial kings. Body cultivator, Dharma cultivator, sword cultivator, armament cultivator, and ghost cultivator are all gone. The allocation is appropriate, and he has considered it thoroughly. Since that's the case, I'll grant him permission. Don't thank me. Giant Armor cupped his fists. Even though she knew that Qian would not reject her request, Seeing heaved a sigh of relief when she heard me agree to it. Now that his team is broken, let's call it Team D4. Yes, the teams of the disciplinary hall were not numbered to facilitate the completion and handover of missions. Naturally, Giant Armor's team had always been numbered. Giant Armor had also asked Gung Seeing about this, so she was naturally vague. Whether a team's number was highly ranked or not was related to the overall strength of the team. Naturally, Seeing had no objections to Team D4's number. Qian Yudang signed another order and handed it to Giant Armor. Bring this order to the military supply department, and you can receive a set of treasures specifically used by the law enforcement hall. However, he must remember that these treasures are extremely easy to refine. Try not to lose them. Yes, Giant Armor replied. The so-called treasures used by the disciplinary hall included the 8 elements restriction Lu Yi. Giant Armor had only used that item once. It required the cooperation of 8 people. When activated, it could restrict the flow of spiritual energy within a certain range. It was specially used to capture people. However, Giant Armor felt that this item was not of much use. Because the members of the disciplinary hall were all at the True Lake realm, ordinary targets could be their opponents, so they needed to use the 8 elements restriction Lu Yi. The only one who could win against an entire team was Li Baxian, a small cultivator. The 8 elements restriction Lu Yi did not have any effect on Li Baxian's spiritual sense. Previously, he had suffered such a loss at the Immortal Dawn Mountain. When Ninghu activated his spiritual sense, he instantly broke through the 8 elements restriction Si Ying's restraint. However, since it was a setup for the disciplinary hall, he naturally wanted it for free. It was said that he would not have the chance to use it at any time. After leaving the small hall of the law department, he rushed towards the military supply department. When he arrived at the military supply department, he handed over the warrant signed by Qian Yudang and successfully received a set of 8 elements restriction Lu Yi. He then rushed back to his own courtyard and distributed the 8 elements restriction Lu Yi. As he distributed, he suddenly realized that one was missing. Where's Xing-chan? Giant Armor then realized that the Divine Ocean Realm Cultivator had not shown up. Yi shook her head, indicating that she knew where Xing-chan had gone. When Zheng Qi was searching, he saw the Divine Ocean Realm Cultivator rushing over from afar. He landed in the courtyard and said happily, "Captain, did you hear that our team has no new members? Obviously you heard about it from Qian Yudang and knew what he was busy with, so you quickly rushed back." Xing then introduced the two sides. Since they were on the same team, it was naturally better for strangers to introduce themselves. Among the people present, the Divine Ocean Realm Cultivator was the weakest. A First-Order True Lake Realm Cultivator would be considered a mistake. Lin Yinxiu and the others all called her senior sister Lin. The Divine Ocean Realm Cultivator's eyelashes curled up as he heard this. Usually Xing would call you by your name. When had she not been called senior sister? In a good mood, the Divine Ocean Realm Cultivator proposed, "Captain, why don't we go and hold a welcoming party for junior brother Li? It can be considered as a celebration for our team's establishment." Wrong suggestion. Xing nodded. "Let's go to the 100 Fragrances Pavilion?" The warrior at the Spirit Sea realm cheered and led the way. Xing-chan and the others who had never met you before were all stunned by your childish behavior. They felt that it was a bit too early to call you senior sister. A moment later, everyone arrived at the 100 Fragrances Pavilion. What made Xing extremely surprised was that the 100 Fragrances Pavilion was not open today. The small door was tightly shut. Thinking about the next time they gathered outside to fight, Zhu Jia frowned and contacted Gungling Sua to ask about the situation. Soon he received a reply. According to Gungling Sua, Shun Manzi had no intention of transferring the management of the 100 Fragrances Pavilion before the next incident, so it was not open for business for a few days. He wants to misunderstand, not because of you. This matter is not a small matter. It's just that Manzi is willing to work so hard. Now you are ready to join your team and work with you in the law enforcement hall. Gungling Sua's team had always lacked a member, so it was perfect for Shun Manzi to join and leave. "Yi, is he going to treat us?" Gungling Sua asked again. "Your 7th senior brother, we are here. We wanted to come to the 100 Fragrances Pavilion to welcome us. Did Xing not introduce us?" Bai Yunjian is wrong. After asking for Bai Yunjian's location, Zhu Jia led everyone over. Just as they reached the door, a person came to greet them. He had a potbelly and was dressed luxuriously. He cupped his fists and asked, "May I ask if you are Lu Yi, fellow cultivator Lu?" "Yes." Zhu Jia was not curious about how this person knew him. "I am the shopkeeper of Bai Yunjian Qianju Lai." The Divine Sea Realm Cultivator chuckled. He felt that this person's name was really boring. Qianju Lai. He was really greedy for money. "Everyone, please come out. Fellow cultivator Gungling Sua has already greeted you and booked a room for you." Only then did Zhu Jia realize that he had seen this person before. How could he recognize him? So it was Gungling Sua who greeted him. It seemed that Gungling Sua was not famous in Grand Heaven City. "Thank you for the trouble." Zhu Jia called out to everyone and followed Qianju Lai inside. The small hall was very quiet. The tables were all full, and the young cultivators were chatting outside in low voices, exchanging toasts and toasting each other. "Bai Yunjian is Tianji Business Alliance's property?" Xing asked without thinking. The main reason was that Boss Qian looked like he could fight with others. Although I didn't have any cultivation, my physique showed that I was used to living like a prince. If I really wanted to fight with others, I would definitely be able to display the strength corresponding to my cultivation. In particular, only cultivators who did not come from Tianji Business Alliance would look like this. Qianju Lai smiled. "Fellow cultivator Lu has sharp eyes. Bai Yunjian is indeed Tianji Business Alliance's property. If fellow cultivator does not have a banquet today, please take care of the store. Since it's Ling Sua's recommendation, there's no problem." Zhu Jia agreed. Since he was working in Grand Heaven City, he had to attend banquets. It was also his fault that he did not have a suitable place to familiarize himself with. Under Qianju Lai's guidance, they passed through the small hall and arrived at the wing in front. Everyone took their seats. Very slowly, delicately cooked food was served. There was no wine. They drank together. Slightly tipsy, the atmosphere gradually became quiet. Everyone drank to their heart's content. Even the Spirit Sea Realm cultivators in Feng Yuchan drank fewer cups. Even Hoopa drank more. It was mainly because he saw that the Martial King was having a hard time drinking, so he wanted to have a taste. As a result, he felt something in his stomach after a few cups and thought that his alcohol tolerance was amazing. By the time the alcohol surged, he was already dizzy and lying on his back. It was not until the stars filled the sky that everyone left Bai Yunjian. The hot wind blew and most of their drunkenness dissipated. Returning to the courtyard, they each found an empty room and went to rest. When Zhu Jia chose the courtyard as his residence, he had considered this matter. There were not many rooms there, enough to satisfy the needs of the 8 of them. In the room, Zhu Jia sat cross-legged and dispelled his drunkenness. He continued to refine exploding fire spirit stones, while silently perfecting his plan. Now that the team is broken, 7th senior brother, and I will rest for 2 days before we go to the hunting pavilion to pick up more missions. This way we can quickly earn merit points and improve our cultivation. During the day, Zhu Jia noticed that 8th senior brother Shaoxing, his cultivation had yet to break through to the 7th order True Lake realm. Obviously, this was the result of his recent cultivation with the spirit tag. Chapter 986. The door suddenly opened, and the doppelganger sneaked in. Yi, who was cultivating beside Lu Yi, quickly opened her eyes. Under the moonlight, Lu Yi entered with a saber, raised a finger to his lips, and quickly closed the door. Yi looked at the doppelganger in a daze, and then at Lu Yi. She was dumbfounded. There were 2 Lu Yes. More importantly, she had been with Lu Yi for so long, but she couldn't tell which one was real and which one was fake. Hoopa, who had seen this scene during the day, was once again enraged. He turned around and hid behind Yi, covering his eyes with his claws. The doppelganger sat cross-legged in front of Lu Yi. Lu Yi took the mountain plate saber from him and pressed it on the doppelganger's chest, urging the power of his talent tree. The roots extended and stabbed into the doppelganger. In the blink of an eye, the lifelike doppelganger turned into nothingness. The spiritual energy, vital energy, and even the broken root of the talent tree that had been consumed to condense the doppelganger were all taken back, leaving only a pile of clothes on the spot. Lu Yi put them away. When Lu Yi was done, Yi asked in surprise, Lu Yi, what's going on? Lu Yi naturally wouldn't hide it from her. If there was one person in the world who knew all his secrets, it was undoubtedly Yi. This is a doppelganger technique. A new ability, I comprehended. Why does it look like the real thing? Yi exclaimed. Lu Yi smiled. In a sense, it's no different from the real thing. Amazing. Yi's eyes lit up. She grabbed Zhou Kuei's arm and said coquettishly, let me use it again. That's fine. Zhou Kuei agreed. The main reason was that the newly formed doppelganger's body was completely naked, so it was too elegant to look at. Naturally, it could be used behind Yi. I casually found an excuse. The consumption is small. I didn't have a chance to show it to him before. Yi wasn't disappointed, but she still nodded obediently. Okay. Cultivate. Zhou Kuei patted her head. As soon as he said that, Wei Ling didn't move. Zhou Kuei's expression turned serious, and he hurriedly checked. There was no movement from Wei Ling, so there was only one possibility. The one who went down the peak did not receive the order to go up. That kind of thing was very slow. After some investigation, I discovered that it was Qian Yudang who told me to immediately rush to the law department's small hall. At that time, when he asked her to go to the small hall of the law department, Xu Lian vaguely felt that something was wrong. Go out for a while, Xu Lian said as she stood up and pushed the door open. Many years later, Xu Lian stepped into the brightly lit law department's small hall. Gan Yudang stood outside with his hands behind his back, his brows furrowed. He was clearly waiting for me. I'm your humble servant. Zhou Kuei cupped his fists. Yesterday, Nightingale reported that there were some strange movements on the misty cliff of Mtimi. It seems that there are no ferocious beasts there. Originally, the A7 squad had accepted the mission during the day and was about to investigate the situation, but this incident delayed them. Zhou Kuei was naturally vague about what had happened. Could it be that the captain of Team A7, Ling Zhou, had been beaten up by some mysterious person? Then, he had come to the law division to slander him and was punished. Now that the spirit boat should be recuperating for a few days, it would probably not be able to lead a team to carry out a mission in the near future. That's what I mean. It was originally an urgent matter. There are very few ferocious beasts in the 4 provinces, including the military province. Nightingale reported the situation clearly, so it didn't matter if it was delayed for a few days. But just now, Nightingale's nest sent a message saying that Nightingale, who reported the situation, had contacted us. Nightingale's Nest was an organization in the law department that was responsible for managing nightingales in all regions. The information reported by nightingales was also organized by Nightingale's Nest. Zhou Kuei had dealt with people from Nightingale's Nest before, because it was an organization directly under the head of the law department. If others interfered, it would be a crime. Some people even knew who were members of Nightingale's Nest. Zhou Kuei raised his eyebrows slightly. Nightingale had just discovered something normal, so she suddenly contacted us. Obviously, there was nothing abnormal. Is Nightingale alive or dead? She's still alive for the time being. It was very difficult to determine whether a person was alive or dead. It was easy to tell by looking at whether my mark on the battlefield had dissipated. If Nightingale's mark hadn't dissipated, it meant that I was still alive. He doesn't have the ability to find people. It's best to leave that matter to him, Gan Yudang said. Only then did Zhou Kuei understand why I had chosen him when there were so few teams in the law department. It turned out that I wanted to look at his tracking disc. Afterward, I had made up my mind to use the tracking disc to complete the mission as much as possible so that I wouldn't consume too little energy. However, things didn't go as I wished. Furthermore, the reason why that mission fell into my hands was because I had found the source. Originally, Team A7 had accepted the mission and was preparing to carry it out. However, when they were 200 meters away from Grand Sky City, the spirit boat was beaten up. I didn't have any thoughts of rejecting the mission. After all, a mission was a mission, and there was no punishment if it was completed. Although I had originally planned to let 7th Senior and the others rest for 2 days less, since there was no mission, there was naturally a reason to rest. Make a trip and find Nightingale. Check on my situation. Also, check the fog cliff of Mount Me. If there are no ferocious beasts, kill them. Zhou Kuei accepted the order and asked, "What's Nightingale's name?" Gan Yudang said a name, and Xu Lian silently noted it down. I then said, "Pay attention to your surroundings. If you encounter a weak enemy, immediately send a message to you." "Yes, go." Gan Yudang waved his hand. Zhou Kuei turned around and walked out of the small hall, quickly returning to his courtyard. Landing in the courtyard, Zhou Kuei said, "Everyone, there are no more missions." The doors of Team A7's rooms were quickly opened, and figures rushed out. Xu Liangui smiled. "So slow and there are no more missions?" I roughly knew how the enforcement hall worked. Since there were no missions, it meant that there was no chance to obtain battle merits. For a new True Lake Realm guard like me, battle merits naturally weren't what I lacked. "Captain, what mission?" Feng Yuechan asked. Normally, you would call Xu Lian Jr. Marshal Brother Liu. Now that she was a member of Team A4, Feng Yuechan quickly adjusted her position and learned from Lin Yinxiu to call Zhou Kuei Captain. "Let's talk as we walk." Zhou Kuei summoned Xu Lian, who was specially prepared for the team. Everyone stepped down slowly. Under Lin Yinxiu's control, the leaf charged through the night sky and turned into a stream of light. Under Lu Yi, Xu Lian looked at the 10-point map while explaining the content of the mission. Chen Tianxue was shocked. "Mist Cliff?" Zhou Kuei looked up at me. 7th Senior Marshal Brother, you know that place?" Chen Tianxue smiled. "That place is about 1,000 kilometers away from Pill Heart Sect. Technically speaking, it's under Pill Heart Sect's jurisdiction. There's no Chen family outside. They're Pill Heart Sect's upper sect, and their ancestors used to be Pill Heart Sect's disciples. What a coincidence. Senior Marshal Brother, you don't know much about Mist Cliff?" Chen Tianxue shook his head. I've been there before, but I know too much about it. I turned to look at Feng Yue-chan. Chan, do you know? Feng Yue-chan said, you heard from my mother that Mist Cliff is called Mist Cliff because it's covered in thick fog all year round. It's so deep that you can't see the bottom. My mother said that there's nothing weird about the thick fog. It seems to be able to block divine sense. Hence, even Divine Sea Realm experts are willing to retreat to this place. In the early years, no Divine Sea Realm cultivators infiltrated this place to investigate, but they didn't find any places to go up. It's possible that there aren't any beasts living here. If there aren't any beasts living here, then it's definitely too bad. It's just a small trip, Zhou Kuei said. Everyone nodded solemnly. Zhou Kuei took out the tracking disc that he had bought from the War Merit Pavilion. He was about to use it to check Nightingale's exact location when Wei Ling didn't respond. Zhou Kuei quickly checked. A moment later he looked like he had something to say. What's wrong? Xiao Xinghe asked. Nightingale contacted him. I heard that he's at a critical moment in his cultivation. He replied soon. That saved him a tracking disc. It was a good thing. Now that Nightingale had contacted him, this matter was easy to handle. When they arrived, they just needed to contact Nightingale and investigate the Mist Cliff. They could find any beasts that might exist here and kill them. Lu Ye's speed was still very slow. The team was now full. They had to take turns and stop all the way. In less than a day, they arrived at Mtimi. This isn't Mist Cliff. Feng Yue-chan pointed up. Zhou Kuei looked down and saw the thick fog rolling above. He could see 7 fingers if he stretched out his hand. Even the scorching sun could penetrate the fog. It was indeed amazing. Go up, Zhou Kuei ordered. Feng Yue-chan, who was riding Lu Yi, immediately controlled Xu Lian to go up. After a while, the 8 of them appeared at the edge of the Mist Cliff. Zhou Kuei had already sent Wei Ling a message and was waiting for Nightingale to come. At the same time, dozens of miles away in the Chun clan. In a small hall, the Chun clan patriarch Li Baxian sat still as if waiting for something. The Chun clan's grade was low, only reaching the 8th grade. It was much worse than the immortal Dawn Mountain that Zhou Kuei had been to before. As the patriarch of the Chun clan, Li Baxian's cultivation was mediocre, not even reaching the 4th order True Lake realm. His cultivation could not be considered the weakest above the Divine Sea realm. Little Elder Chunlai hurried over and cupped his fists. Patriarch, Nightingale sent a message. The people from the law enforcement hall are here. Li Baxian nodded lightly. The law enforcement hall's actions are sometimes slow. Since they're here, act according to the plan. Let us watch a good show and send us away quickly. Yes. Chunlai responded and sent a message out. Xu Lian snorted, they're so careless. They actually let a big Nightingale notice. If it weren't for the High Lord not having any means to stop them, I'm afraid they would have ended up in trouble. Chunlai said, they haven't been rewarded yet. These are all useful things. They'll do it again in the past. It's best if they don't have a past. Otherwise, if the High Lord blames them, no one will be able to bear it. Li Baxian said angrily, but he didn't feel any heartache. The High Lord's methods have no limits. It's a waste to use them on a Nightingale. Our matters were intentionally exposed by a Nightingale. The Chun clan could only quickly capture Nightingale, but they didn't dare to kill her. The main reason was that once Nightingale died, the law division would definitely investigate to the end. At that time, the Chun clan would be able to get away with it. They could only use the methods left behind by the High Lord. Chapter 987. Fortunately, the worst-case scenario didn't happen. Nightingale was also subdued. As long as we do the right thing this time, there shouldn't be a problem, Chunlai said. Chen Tianxue nodded slightly and asked casually, which team from the disciplinary hall came this time? There's no news for now. Nightingale is on her way to meet them. We'll know when she meets them. Report at any time. Chen Tianxue ordered indifferently, but he was secretly vigilant. He hoped it wasn't one of the more troublesome teams. The secret under the fog cliff couldn't be exposed. While waiting at the edge of the fog cliff, Lu Yi said, you wait here. I'll go down and take a look. I'll go with you. Li Baxian stepped forward. Lu Yi pondered for a moment and agreed. The two jumped into the thick fog one after the other. The moment they entered the fog, the surrounding light disappeared and was replaced by darkness. Lu Yi slowed down while sensing Li Baxian's position. At first, there was nothing abnormal. But as the two dived deeper, Lu Yi found that his perception seemed to be suppressed by an invisible force. He couldn't sense Li Baxian's existence anymore. He hurriedly urged his divine sense and immediately found that Feng Yuechan was right. The fog here had a mysterious suppression on divine sense. The deeper they went, the more obvious the suppression. After diving for less than 100 feet, Lu Ye's expression changed and he whispered, "Fourth senior brother. Magnetic field." Li Baxian's voice came from nearby, sounding surprised. It couldn't be helped. The spiritual power flowing in their bodies showed signs of being suppressed. This was clearly the work of the magnetic field. Lin Yinxiu only sensed the magnetic field, but the flying sword didn't have divine sense. Although it was constantly suppressed, it felt even more vaguely than me. Dust particles gathered in the thick fog, and the magnetic force field was emitted from those particles. Those particles were shockingly the dust of the magnetite ores. "We can go further up," Chu Rongmao said. Simply having one's perception and divine sense suppressed wasn't too big of a problem. As long as one was vigilant enough, they could avoid some of the potential risks. However, the magnetic field wasn't the bane of cultivators. The higher they went, the less concentrated the magnetic field became. Once Lu Ye's divine sense was imprisoned, they would inevitably fall to the bottom of the cliff. Moreover, it wouldn't be safe at all, and even coming down would be troublesome. The strange thing was that even divine ocean realm cultivators were willing to enter that damned place. Spiritual power was the smallest advantage of the spirit sea realm, but that advantage was of no use here. With the existence of the magnetic field, such a place could not be considered a small danger zone. "Go!" the flying sword shouted. Taking advantage of the fact that Chu Rong was obviously suppressed, it flew down. Lin Yinxiu followed closely behind. A moment later, the two of them broke through the blockade of the thick fog and returned to the cliff. When he landed, he saw a cultivator wearing a mask standing to the side. It should be Nightingale. Chu Rong picked up the guard token at his waist and shook it. "Chu Rong, 4th Squad of the Law Enforcement Hall. Greetings, little one." Nightingale saluted. "Report his findings in detail," Chu Rong ordered. Nightingale then informed me of her findings. Yes, before I could finish my sentence, we suddenly heard cries of alarm and screams nearby. Everyone looked in the direction of the sound and saw everything. The source of the sound was not far away. Judging from the sound, something must have happened. "Let's go and take a look." As the flying sword spoke, it soared into the sky and flew over. Everyone followed closely behind. Nightingale's cultivation was the highest. She was at the true lake realm, so she was at the front. While someone was paying attention to me, she raised her hand and tapped on her battlefield imprint to send out a message. In the Chun family's small hall, the young elder Ling Qi raised his head and looked at Li Baxian. Nightingale sent a message. This time 4th Squad is carrying out a mission. The leader is called Flying Sword. Li Baxian's heart was immediately put at ease. It's good that it's these teams. He suddenly reacted and looked up. What did he say the leader was called? Flying Sword. Ling Qi answered. Lu Ye from the Jade Blood Sect? It should be me. Chu Rong nodded. You heard that I joined the law enforcement hall and caused a big disturbance in Haotian City. The news of several teams of the law enforcement hall gathering a crowd to fight had already spread throughout Haotian City. The communication between cultivators was extremely convenient, so it was natural that Ling Qi did not hear about it. Seeing Li Baxian's expression, Ling Qi asked curiously, "Master knows me? You've seen him before." Chu Rongmao shook his head. "Yes. My lord has already ordered me to befriend this person at all costs if I meet him." Chu Rong was moved. "My lord thinks so highly of me? My lord has never considered." Li Baxian looked excited. That's really a godsend opportunity. Originally, the Zhou family was almost exposed. Even if they made up for it beforehand, they would still be punished. But if they could befriend Lu Ye according to the Lord's order, and even enlighten him so that he could work for the Lord, it would definitely be a small merit. At that time they would not be able to make up for it. The show should be over soon, right? Li Baxian asked. It's not bad. 8th Elder's Chen Liamong was sent out. It's enough for us to report. Chu Rong replied. It was not that he felt pity for Chen Liamong. 8th Elder had raised him for decades. That time Chen Liamong's corpse would not be intact. With Chen Liamong's help, the strength of the 8 elders of the beast taming school would be reduced. But that was something that could be done. Nightingale had not reported whether there were any ferocious beasts here. If the law enforcement hall found something, they would definitely leave. They would only leave if they did not find a way to report to the Lord. Then the secret on the fog cliff could be preserved. Although this secret could not be discovered by anyone, it was better to be safe than sorry. He personally went to invite Liu Yao over. I led the team to kill the ferocious beasts and saved your Chun family. Your Chun family should thank him. Ling Qi naturally knew Li Baxian's plan, and immediately accepted the order. Yes. At this time, Flying Sword and the others had not yet arrived at the source of the movement. Looking from afar, they saw a few figures running for their lives in the rear, shouting and yelling. In front of them there was a giant python that was more than 10 feet long chasing after them. This giant python was very small, and its body was covered with green scales. The two sides of the snake's head were hidden and bulging. Its power was extraordinary. From afar they could feel its ferocious aura. If such a giant python took a step back, it would most likely turn into a flood dragon. The giant python's abdomen was not bulging, and it looked like a human shape. Obviously, no one had encountered it and was swallowed alive. The few people who were still alive were scared out of their wits. In such a situation they should have been running for their lives every year. However, those people were gathered together. Obviously, they were frightened and did not have the master of the 8 gods. The few cultivators' cultivation was also low, and they were all only at the spirit stream realm. They could even escape by flying, and their speed was even slower than Chen Liamong's. Just as the giant python opened its bloody mouth and was about to launch an attack, a sizzling sound suddenly rang out. Then the flying sword slashed at the python's head one after another. Chu Rongmao took the lead. The sword cultivator's killing power was the weakest, and the speed of the giant armor was also the slowest. In the blink of an eye, it chopped at Chen Liamong's head. Sparks flew, and the green scales covering the python's body were extremely strong. They blocked the attack of the giant armor and did not cause any obvious injuries. However, the force of the collision still caused the giant python to stagger, and the spirit stream stage cultivators managed to avoid disaster by a hair's breadth. Before the flying sword rushed down, it stepped on Chen Liamong's head. Holding the Panshan saber, it stabbed at the python's head fiercely. Under the saber a light flashed, and the double-peak sharp spirit pattern supported it. When the saber fell, Chen Liamong obviously sensed the danger. Its head shook, and its demonic aura surged, turning into a solid defense. The saber broke through the demonic aura protection and stabbed under Chen Liamong's head. It went half a foot into the flesh, but it could not move back. Chen Liamong was in pain, and the snake's tongue moved in and out of its mouth. It shook its head and wanted to throw the flying sword up. However, Bai Lin, who was rushing over, grabbed its tail with both hands and pulled it forward. The 30-meter-long giant python's body was pulled forward, and it fell to the ground. Lin Yin's sleeves floated in the air, and her giant armor appeared, turning into streaks of sword light that slashed upwards. Next to me, Feng Yuechan's expression was solemn, and she quickly formed exquisite techniques. Xiao Xinghe also rushed over and took out his saber. Taking advantage of Chen Liamong's momentary struggle to get up, he slashed at the python's body, causing sparks to fly and blood to splatter. A ghostly figure suddenly appeared next to Chen Liamong's head. It was Chen Tianshui, and the short sword in his hand mercilessly stabbed at the python's eyes. In one strike, the python's eyes were intact. Chen Liamong was enraged, and it turned its head to bite at Chen Tianshui. In an instant, a fishy smell assaulted Chen Tianshui's face, and he slowly opened his eyes. Your body floated forward, and the Zhurong python's bloody mouth chased after you. It looked as if it wanted to bite you to death. A tower-like body suddenly appeared behind Zhurong Mao. Bai Lin's qi and blood surged. She squatted slightly, and her center of gravity shifted upwards. It was as if special roots had grown from her feet. The giant snake's head slammed into me, and Bai Lin moved. I suddenly raised my hand and grabbed one of the fangs on Chen Liameng's lower jaw. My other hand grabbed the fangs on his upper jaw. With a roar, I suddenly spun, and the giant snake's body was shaken like a whip. It spun half a circle, and then fell heavily to the ground. Dust flew everywhere. However, everyone's attacks didn't stop. Lin Yin's giant armor, Feng Yuechan's techniques, and Chu Rong's and Xiao Xinghe's saber's attacks didn't break the python's body. Chen Liameng, who was thrown to the ground, wanted to raise his head, but Bai Lin had already stepped on his head, and she swung her fist at his head. Every time his fist landed, the small ground would tremble. No matter how much Chen Liameng struggled, he couldn't break free from the restraints of Chu Rong's foot. Chen Tianshui took advantage of the situation, and the short sword in his hand slashed at the Zhurong python's weak defense, stabbing it to his heart's content. At first, the Zhurong python resisted quite fiercely, but gradually, its movements became louder and louder, until it finally stopped breathing. As Bai Lin punched out, the head of the true lake realm Chen Liameng was split open. Chapter 988. The battle started quickly and ended quickly as well. In less than 20 breaths of time, such a ferocious demonic beast had been killed. The few spirit stream stage cultivators who had been rescued were dumbstruck, unable to regain their senses for a long time. It was only then that Nightingale finally arrived. Lu Yi stepped on the jade scale python and pulled out the mountain pan saber. He glanced at Ying. Is it this vicious beast? It should be. Ying nodded. Mission complete. This mission was much easier than the mission to find the person. It was mainly because the team of 6 cooperated seamlessly, and all 6 of them had decent strength. That was why they were able to take it down without any casualties. There was no need to rush back. To be safe, it would be better to patrol the surroundings. In any case, it wouldn't take too much time. As Lu Yi thought this, he suddenly raised his head and looked in a certain direction. He saw a streak of light quickly flying over. Feeling the spiritual energy fluctuations, it was obviously a true lake realm cultivator. Lu Yi waved his hand without leaving a trace. Ying cupped her fists silently and quickly retreated, disappearing without a trace. Yi Ying's identity was extremely hidden. It was best not to show her face in front of others. Lu Yi didn't know who it was, but it was very likely that it was someone from a nearby sect or family who had noticed the commotion and came to investigate. A moment later, the person landed, revealing his figure. Lu Yi looked over and saw that it was a white-haired old man. Although he was old, his body was sturdy, and his vitality was abundant. It was obvious that he walked the path of a body cultivator. Great Elder! The Spirit Stream Realm cultivators who were still in shock cried out in grief. What happened? The old man asked. Among them, the younger ones calmed down and told him what had happened. You were following Senior Brother Wan to patrol the surroundings. When you passed by this place, this beast suddenly attacked and swallowed Senior Brother Wan whole. It also wanted to eat you. It was these people who saved you. As I spoke, I pointed to Mei Jian and the others. Hearing this, the old man became angry. Lu Yi, such a vicious beast actually appeared in your territory. Why didn't you notice it later? He had a pained expression. Turning around, he looked at Chen Lai and the others. This old man is Lu Yi, little elder Mei Jian. May I ask who you are? Chen Lai cupped his fists and said in a low voice, Law Enforcement Division, 4th Squad Chen Lai. The Chen family was shocked. The Law Enforcement Hall? Chen Lai explained. Later on, when I received news that there were no ferocious beasts in this area, I came to investigate and happened to see this ferocious beast attacking people. I see. Chen Jia's expression turned anxious. I still have to thank everyone for saving the lives of you, Lu Yi, and a few other capable disciples. It is the Law Enforcement Hall's duty to punish evil and eradicate traitors. To the Hall of Justice, it's part of our duty, Mei Jian said. But to you, Lu Yi, and the other disciples, it's a life-saving grace. Turning to look at the cultivators, Mei Jian said, Take your time. Thank you, senior brothers and sisters. After the cultivators hurriedly left, they sincerely expressed their thanks. Chun-Li waved his hand, indicating that he would definitely take it to heart. Back then we came here to carry out a mission, but in the end we were still one step too late, unable to save senior brother Wan's life. The Chun family said, I dare not forget the life-saving grace. If everyone wants to leave, can you Lu Yi let Mei Jian do the honors of a host? Little elder is too polite. Your mission has been completed, so you can return after patrolling the surrounding area. If the mission was completed and they had to hurry back to hand in the mission and collect the merit points, they wouldn't have time to waste outside. If that's the case, all of you can immediately send a message to dispatch some people to casually investigate 100 kilometers away. If there's nothing out of the ordinary, immediately inform all of you. After all, this is your territory. Protecting the safety of the mortals in your territory is also your duty, Lu Yi. How could I dare to trouble the elites of the law enforcement hall? The Chun family advised, although everyone's cultivation is ordinary, there are only 8 of you. If we leave this place to you, Lu Yi, there will definitely be a reason. What do you think? Mei Jian pondered for a moment and nodded. That's fine too. Under abnormal circumstances, the matters in a sect's territory were indeed the responsibility of the sect. Even if the law enforcement team didn't come on that trip, Lu Yi would still sit by and watch if the jade-scaled python caused trouble. He would definitely send the weaker members of the clan to suppress and kill it. Letting Lu Yi inspect the situation in his territory to make sure there are no other ferocious creatures causing trouble will also save us some trouble. Moreover, it's already late. Although it won't affect the journey too much, it's still as convenient as during the day. It's too late to rest at Mei Jian for a night. Please. The Chun family extended his hand to invite them and immediately led the way. Chun-Li nodded slightly and led everyone in front of the Chun family. After a short while, they arrived at Mei Jian's location. Like the Zhou family in Dingtian City, Lu Ye's location was at the foot of Mi Mountain, and the environment was even more noisy. Although there was a large difference in grade between Mei Jian and the Zhou family, the scale of Mei Jian was obviously smaller. There were continuous buildings at the foot of the mountain, all of which belonged to the Zhou family. The figures of various young cultivators could be seen everywhere. While leading the way, the Chun family explained the situation at Lu Ye's place to Mei Jian and the others, appearing very cold. However, the difference in age was still quite a bit. Moreover, their seniority was also the same. Furthermore, Chun-Li was someone who could chat with others. He could only respond to 17 from time to time. The atmosphere was hot and cold at the same time. Soon we arrived at a small hall. It should be Lu Ye's guest hall. Mei Jian and the others took their seats. Mei Jian said, everyone please take a seat for a moment. Go and ask the family head to come over. Also, arrange for people to patrol. Chun-Li had an objection. The Chun family left. After a while, Lu Ye's servant came to serve tea. After rushing all the way and fighting just now, Chun-Li wasn't thirsty. He picked up the teacup and took a sip. As soon as the tea entered my stomach, my expression changed slightly. I raised my head and looked at Chun Tianxue. Don't drink. Chun Tianxue hadn't brought the teacup to his mouth when he was surprised. What's wrong? The others also paused in their movements. It's not poisonous. Chun-Li closed his eyes and immersed himself in his talent tree. At that moment, a gray mist appeared under the tree. Just like that, I noticed that there was nothing wrong with my god's lake. Quickly took a look. I saw that there was something missing from the god's lake. It seemed to be a well-known bug. If Chun-Li didn't have his divine sense, he wouldn't have noticed it. I also knew what kind of bug it was. Even the talent tree was able to burn it immediately. And it must have retreated into his body through the mouthful of tea just now. Mei Jian instantly understood. It wasn't poison outside the tea, but a foreign object. The talent tree did not have an extremely sensitive reaction to foreign objects that invaded its body, which was why it burned into a gray mist. When the bug got close to the god's lake, a bunch of flames wrapped around it. Chun-Li heard a sharp and shrill cry before the bug turned into nothing. The color of the flames that burned the bug was the same as the flames under the talent tree. It was obvious that the talent tree was showing its strength. Dang! Chun Tianxue was so frightened that he threw the teacup in his hand. Although he didn't know how Mei Jian tasted that the tea wasn't poisonous, He was always the most obedient one. He would do whatever the captain said. Chun Lai opened his eyes and stood up. Let's go. It was best to stay in a dangerous place. Just now, I didn't have a strange feeling because the law enforcement hall's reputation had always been very good. After all, they rarely did things that offended people. Sects and clans would always keep a respectful distance from them, but when it came to Lu Yi, they were coldly invited. Chun Lai thought about it. After all, they had saved the lives of Lu Ye's disciples. It was natural for them to thank them, but now it seemed that the so-called thank you was just a pretense. Lu Yi didn't have any plans to benefit us. I thought about it. What was Lu Yi doing? If we offended the disciplinary hall, we wouldn't have anything good to do. There was no need for such a small family to play with fire. This bug didn't have any use. Time was tight. Chun Lai didn't have much time to think. I only knew that it was more important to leave. At the same time, in a secret room, a moon-reflecting plate showed the situation in the small hall. Chun Lai and Lin Yinxiu were watching from outside, monitoring the small hall. Seeing Chun Lai take a sip of tea, Lin Yinxiu revealed a happy expression, as if a small victory had been decided. However, her happy expression slowly turned into astonishment. Chun Lai noticed the abnormality in the tea and quickly stood up. In front of me, a man smashed his teacup. What's going on? Chun Lai wasn't dumbfounded. The method given by the High Lord couldn't be noticed unless one was at the Divine Sea realm. Even if Lu Ye didn't have the ability, he should have noticed it. For example, this Nightingale. Before she was captured, she was obedient. Now, although Nightingale was still a member of the Law Division, in reality she was one of us. But there were all kinds of signs. Our methods have been exposed to Chun Lai. We can leave. Lin Yinxiu's reaction was faster than Chun Lai's. Before she realized it, she took out a jade pendant and poured spiritual energy into it. In an instant there was a buzzing sound. The small formation has been activated. Bring people to stop us. No matter what, we can leave and we can send a message. Except for Lu Ye, kill everyone else. Lin Yinxiu slowly ordered. Yes. Mei Jian responded and hurriedly flashed out. Lin Yinxiu's forehead was covered in sweat. She felt that today's small matter was wonderful. The main thing was that I didn't expect Mei Jian to be so vigilant. He didn't notice the abnormality in the tea. The people that the High Lord valued couldn't be underestimated. Although it was chaotic, Lu Ye hadn't drunk the tea yet. This thing shouldn't have hatched yet. In this case, Lu Ye was one of us. As long as the other 7 people had a chance to send a message, they could kill us outside. There was no way to turn the situation around. Thoughts flashed in her mind. Lin Yinxiu wiped the sweat from her forehead. She raised her hand and tapped on her battlefield imprint to send a message. Please report to the High Lord. At the same time, in a secluded place in the War Province, the lake rippled and the autumn water rippled. By the lakeside, there were 2 straw huts. There were no women fishing by the lakeside. Even after fishing for a long time, there were no fish. I was also relaxed. I just sat under the chair with a leisurely expression. Beside the woman, there was no man with an enchanting figure standing quietly. I knew that he had been standing there for a long time, but he didn't look impatient. He often looked at the side of the woman's face. The man's eyes were full of love. Chapter 989. On the shore of the lake there was a peaceful atmosphere. Under the night sky a gentle breeze blew through the girl's hair. She closed her eyes comfortably. Suddenly she frowned and revealed a trace of displeasure. She lowered her head to check her battlefield imprint. She didn't know which blind person disturbed her at such a time. Soon her expression changed. What's the matter? The fishing man's voice came from behind her. The girl looked up at him and reported carefully, Senior, Lu Ye brought the enforcement hall team to the Chun family. The Chun family's patriarch, Chan Tianchue, enlightened him. Ka-cha, the fishing rod in the senior's hand, was suddenly crushed. He turned to look at the girl and shouted angrily, "How dare he?" Although his voice wasn't loud, his expression was extremely fierce. The girl quickly knelt on one knee. Senior, please calm down. You can't do anything right. The senior was obviously annoyed by Chen Tianshui's actions. Enlightened? For the past few decades he had been planning something big enough to overturn the current situation of the 9 states. For this he needed to wait for a special person. Unfortunately, after so many years, he hadn't found a suitable candidate until the sudden rise of the Jade blood sects Wuxia. This made him realize that Wuxia should be the person he was waiting for. That was why he gave the order to befriend Wuxia at all costs. But his order was to befriend him, not enlighten him. Because once enlightened, even if Wuxia obeyed them, he would lose his value. It should be. The man replied with fear, but for some reason, the Spirit Sea Realm cultivator seemed to have noticed something and was about to leave Xiaoshuek. So what if I noticed something? The senior was surprised. How could I have noticed it? If it wasn't Chen Tianshui, it would be impossible for him to notice it. According to the information I received, he had just reached the 7th Order True Lake Realm after a long time. How could a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator not have the ability? Xiao Xiefeng also understood. I sent a message to ask how to deal with this matter. The senior was silent for a moment before saying, Xiao Shui hasn't used it yet. The man felt a chill. He knew that an 8th Order family could disappear from the 4 states with just a few words from the senior. There is someone more capable than you of honored Lord Han who. He told us to spare the lives of the Spirit Sea Realm warriors and kill the others. The High Lord slowly came to a decision and slowly stood up. Also, he went to the fog cliff. The plan will be delayed. Originally, they still needed to wait for a few more days. However, with Xiao Shui's actions, it would definitely attract the attention of the Grand Sky Alliance. At that time, if they didn't send Chen Tianshui to investigate the situation, even if Chen Tianshui was willing to enter the Misty Cliff and the possibility of the secret on the Misty Cliff being exposed was very high, they still had to guard against it. He could only delay the plan in case something unexpected happened. At that time there was no such thing as a perfect plan in this world. For several decades, I worked hard to plan and strategize in front of the curtains, secretly using various young masters' methods. I was confident that even if the plan was delayed, it would only affect a small part of the situation. Yes, the man replied and soared into the sky. Very slowly his figure disappeared. The High Lord stood where he was and muttered to himself for a moment. Then he turned around and headed in another direction. I looked into the distance and saw a face that I hadn't seen for a long time. I muttered, "Please don't block your way." A cold light flashed across my eyes like a blade. Meishan Xiaoshui in the guest hall there was a buzzing sound. Chen Jia felt his body sink slightly. Although this feeling of weightlessness disappeared very slowly, I realized what had happened. Space restriction formation. There was actually a space restriction formation here. But even so, with the activation of the forbidden space formation, a layer of transparent light rapidly rose up and enveloped Qi Xiao. Trap formation. The expressions of the people in front of me changed. The Chun clan master's expression grew solemn as he channeled spiritual power into his eyes. Under the hazy moonlight, he looked at the figures that had suddenly emerged from the confinement formation. Surprisingly, their leader was the young elder of Xiaoshui Luyi, who had treated us coldly just a moment ago. 7 pairs of eyes met and Xiaoshui shouted, "What is Lingxi doing? Is she rebelling?" That was what I wanted to understand the most. Luyi invited us to Lingxi as guests, but in the end, she tampered with our tea. Before that happened, she even activated the formation to trap us here. I really wanted to understand why and what Lingxi wanted to do. We all had grievances with Lingxi, so Xiaoshui had a reason to do this. Was Lingxi from the Myriad Devil Ridge? Chen Jia thought about it and couldn't think of such a possibility. The Myriad Devil Ridge had always regarded me as a thorn in their side, and hated that they had to get rid of me. We had done so, but unfortunately we had always succeeded. Today he was unprepared and had knocked Lingxi back. This was a very good opportunity. However, even if Lingxi could get rid of us, there was no place for us in the military province. Was it worth it for a small 8th rank family to act like this? As he shouted, the Chun clan's leader secretly made a gesture with one of his hands behind his back. Lui's figure flashed. He wanted to use Xiaoshui's body as cover to send a message. But why did Lingxi do this? The current situation was extremely beneficial to us. Naturally, it was more important to send a message for help. However, before Luye could do anything, Luye had already shouted, "Kill us!" I naturally knew that they couldn't give Xiao Shui and the others a chance to send a message. Otherwise, Chen Tianxue wouldn't be able to send reinforcements. Once that happened, Lingxi would be far from being destroyed. When I gave the order, I also paid close attention to Chen Jia's reaction. In my opinion, if Chen Jia hadn't been enlightened, they would be on our side. The methods left behind by the High Lord were very useful. Although Divine Sea Realm cultivators were famous, as long as it was Chen Tianxue, they wouldn't be able to resist. After I gave the order, the young master's flying artifacts and spells covered the sky as they attacked the guest hall. Zhu Jia roared and jumped out in front of everyone. As his blood and qi surged, his body seemed to expand. Spiritual energy surged around me. I raised my hand and pressed it in the air. With my palm as the source, a tortoise-shell-like barrier suddenly formed, blocking the figures of everyone in front of me. When the weapons and spells of the young masters landed on the barrier, the sound of metal clashing could be heard, causing the barrier that was originally shining with a dazzling light to suddenly become dull. Then it became whole again. Although Zhu Jia's defensive method was weak, it still couldn't withstand the combined attacks of the young masters of Lingxi. The Chen Jia and the others attacked together. In an instant, the light of blades and the shadows of swords flashed, and spiritual energy became chaotic. At this time, somewhere in the crowd, the head of Lingxi, Lin Yinxiu, stared at the Chen Jia behind the guest hall, her heart cold. It worked. The Divine Sea Realm cultivator hadn't been enlightened. Lu Yi thought that the Chen Jia hadn't been enlightened, and Lin Yinxiu thought so too. After all, I had seen the Chen Jia drink this tea with my own eyes. As long as they drank this tea, they could avoid the fate of being enlightened. However, at this moment I couldn't be sure of one thing. That Divine Sea Realm cultivator hadn't been enlightened, because I hadn't used the method left behind by the High Lord. However, I couldn't sense any signs of resonance on Xiao Shui's side. At this moment I glared angrily. There wasn't a single silver thread in my eyes, and there were special insects swimming in my eyeballs. It looked extremely strange. Originally, as long as the Chen Jia was enlightened, I could use this method to make the Chen Jia betray me. At that time, the people around me wouldn't be able to guard against it. With the help of Lingxi's weak attacks, it would be easy to kill these 7 people. As long as the 7 people were killed, the crisis would be resolved. As for how to deal with it, and how to explain the death of the 7 members to the law department, there was no way. But now, the Chen Jia's side was completely dependent on me. I also saw Lu Ye, who was in front of the Chen Jia, send out a message. I immediately understood that no matter what happened to the Chen Jia and the others, Lingxi was completely finished. Kill! Kill us all! Lin Yinxiu calmed herself down and shouted. Lingxi was finished and she had to drag some people down with her. As soon as the order was given, the spirit stream cultivators who had gathered behind the guest hall boldly charged toward the back. Chili Bashian's flying sword wreaked havoc, and the Lingxi cultivators at the back immediately fell like weeds. Seeing this, I frowned, because most of the cultivators who fell were at the Chanlai realm or the Cloud River realm. I was able to kill them like flies. However, right now there was no time for mercy. Although his heart was filled with forbearance, he didn't hesitate in the slightest to attack. Numerous beams of sword light slashed through the crowd, reaping the lives of the spirit stream cultivators. Miserable screams filled the air. Li Baxian's flying sword showed off its might, but Feng Yuechan's magical techniques were also lacking. Every single one of her magical techniques was useless. However, Lingxi had probably turned out in full force this time. There were even broken land cultivators flying over from one direction to join the battle. This direction was suspected to be the location of Lingxi's Heaven's Secret Hall. The Xiao Shui cultivators who were at the Chanlai battlefield and the Cloud River battlefield should have received a message and were slowly rushing back. In a short 10 breaths of time, the corpses of Lingxi cultivators piled up behind the guest hall. Blood flowed like a river. At this moment, the Chun clan and the others were locked in a bitter battle. As an 8th-rank Lingxi clan, they had very few true Lake Realm cultivators. Excluding those who were inside, there were only 10 true Lake Realm cultivators left in the clan. These Chunlai Realm and Cloud River Realm cultivators couldn't withstand a single blow from Xiao Shui. But the true Lake Realm cultivators were the same. In the end, we didn't have much strength. The Chun clan could only kill 1 or 2 true Lake Realm cultivators, but they had a way to kill everyone else in a short period of time. The 8 of them fought as they advanced, and after a short while, they reached the entrance of the guest hall. They had a way to advance again. If they really wanted to enter and exit the guest hall, the space was too narrow, and they couldn't use their full strength. If the Lingxi cultivators swarmed them, they would definitely be trapped, and the situation would only worsen. In a short 80 breaths of time, the 8 of them hadn't sustained any injuries. Although they were light, they still affected their ability to use their full strength. Looking at the dense crowd of cultivators behind them, the Chun clan cultivator took a deep breath and grabbed at the air. A round ball the size of a baby's head appeared in his hand. When she saw this, Lu Ye's eyes narrowed, and an extremely safe feeling rose up in her heart. Stop! Stop me! Lu Yi roared and charged toward the Chun clan cultivator. 96. Chapter 990. Chunlai didn't know what it was in Lu Ye's hand, but he felt an extremely dangerous aura from the ball-like object. As soon as he finished speaking, he had already arrived in front of Lu Yi, his spirit energy surging as he punched out. Although he was old as a body cultivator, his strength couldn't be underestimated. He was confident that Lu Yi, a 5th-order true Lake Realm cultivator, couldn't block this punch. As he punched out, his other hand reached out to grab the ball-like object, intending to snatch it. A blade slashed through the air, but Chunlai pushed his blood chi and spirit energy to protect himself, not dodging. It wasn't until the blade slashed down that Chunlai realized that something was wrong. An irresistible force hit him from the front, causing his body to stiffen. The spirit energy and blood chi protecting his body was directly broken, and when he felt the pain, he was already flying backwards. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the head of the other Chun family elder who had rushed up with him fly high into the air. That was the 7th elder, a 7th-order true Lake Realm cultivator. In the True Lake Realm, a 7th-order True Lake Realm cultivator was definitely not weak, but he couldn't even block a single blade from Lu Yi. Moreover, that blade had first forced him back, then beheaded the 7th elder. Chunlai felt a chill run down his spine as a huge sense of crisis arose in his heart. Then a series of crackling sounds reached his ears. When he regained his footing and looked over again, he couldn't help but be startled. In front of the entrance of the guest hall, Lu Ye's position had been replaced by a 10-meter-tall scarlet figure. The figure's curves were smooth, and its body was angular from top to bottom, giving off an extremely weak impression. Under the scarlet figure, there were simple and profound patterns that ran from the face to the torso, spreading to the 7 limbs, forming an extremely wild totem. 2 dark red lights lit up in the eyes of the small figure, like 2 soul-stirring ghostly flames, causing people to feel a chill in their hearts. Air waves visible to the naked eye emanated from the scarlet figure's feet and spread out with a loud bang. Along with it, an indescribable sense of oppression spread out. In an instant, all the cultivators without spirit energy were attracted to this scene as they stared in a daze. At the front of the crowd, Xianginghuan, who was hiding in the dark, was even more dumbfounded. Just now, Lu Yi had been sent flying. Although I was standing there, I could see everything clearly. Lu Yi suddenly took out a ball the size of a baby's fist. Then, the ball gathered and turned into many small fragments that crawled toward me. In the blink of an eye, I had turned into a ferocious creature that was 80 feet tall. What was that? Even though Li Baxian was the patriarch of an 8th-grade family, and his cultivation wasn't even at the 4th-order True Lake Realm, he was still shocked by this scene. Crescent armor? It was said that Lu Yi did not have any armor, and that kind of armor was simply unheard of. What scared me even more was that Lu Yi, who was wearing the armor, was holding a long saber that was about 18 meters long. The blade of the saber was like a bamboo joint, and there were no joints at every 1 foot of the saber. With the long saber in his hand, a ferocious aura spread out, as if an ancient ferocious beast had been born. At that moment, All the cultivators without spirit energy felt a chill in their hearts. Phew! There was a heavy exhalation, and air visible to the naked eye gushed out of the sharp edges of the crescent armor, turning into white mist. The long saber was held horizontally by his side, and he swung it heavily, as if he was driving away mosquitoes. A faint saber light flashed, and the figures of the young cultivators behind the Chen family instantly stiffened, including an elder named Chen Tianshui. Just a moment ago I was squatting slightly, and the tip of the saber was facing upwards. Dragging the saber, I passed through these stiff cultivators. The strong wind that was stirred up blew those people's stiff bodies. Every once in a while, the lower half of everyone's body slid down, revealing the smooth incision on the upper half of their bodies. Blood gushed into the sky. A tiger in a flock of sheep. The majestic figure of the dragon throne, coupled with the exaggerated shape of the dragon spine saber, killed every cultivator with spirit energy with every flash of the saber. Everywhere it passed, there was a rain of blood. "Kill me!" An angry roar came from the front of the crowd. Only then did the young spiritual chi cultivators abruptly return to their senses, brazenly rushing towards this small figure in fear. The saber light surged, but no one fell. The person in front was not afraid at all. He stepped on the blood and corpses on the ground and desperately charged back. From a distance, the scene was both tragic and shocking. In the guest hall, the 7 people from the Myriad Devil Ridge were dumbfounded at the sudden change. After that, some of us personally witnessed the might of the dragon throne. We thought that this trip would be more dangerous than auspicious, but who knew that the Chen family didn't have such a trump card? The Chen family charged out with the dragon throne, attracting the attention of 40% of the cultivators, and the pressure on our side was immediately reduced. Giant Armor and Xiao Xinghe stood at the entrance of the guest hall. The two of them formed a barrier with their sabers, blocking the scattered cultivators. Xiang Yinghuan and Feng Yuechan used their own methods to kill the enemies. Lin Yinxiu's figure appeared and disappeared, but every time she attacked, she was unable to kill them. With the 7 of them working together, they could protect themselves for now. The situation is right. The Myriad Devil Ridge spoke and glanced at the Chen family. Since the beginning of the situation, nothing was right. Who would have thought that the spiritual power would suddenly be beneficial to them? At this moment they felt that there was no harmony at all. Logically speaking, facing Xiang Ying, who was wearing the dragon throne, even a cultivator like Chen Tianshui would not be afraid. The so-called morale was like a tiger's vigor in a spurt of wind. Then it would weaken and be exhausted. Xiang Ying had not lost so many people. Whoever was still alive, they would definitely be afraid. However, the spiritual power cultivators didn't seem to be afraid in the slightest. Following this order, even the most inconspicuous spiritual stream realm cultivators dared to approach Xiang Ying's side as if they had gone mad. It was as if they cared about their own lives. There were even some people who climbed down from the dragon throne's small figure and madly attacked the dragon throne, causing banging sounds to ring out. Although the Chen family killed slowly, they were still able to stop the cultivators with spiritual power. A moment ago, the dragon throne's small and slender figure could already be seen from where it was. The sea of people with spiritual power had already completely submerged the dragon throne. Just as the Myriad Devil Ridge and the others were worried about the Chen family's safety, a heavy and deep voice suddenly came from the human mountain. Crescent Moon. As soon as the voice fell, a bit of blade light was released from the human mountain. Immediately after, a dense amount of blade light slashed out like a crescent moon. The sizzling sound was inaudible. The human mountain collapsed and severed limbs and pieces of flesh flew everywhere. The dragon throne's figure that had been submerged reappeared. The scarlet figure was covered in wet blood, and it looked even dimmer. Lu Ye's head flew to the back of the guest hall, and just happened to roll onto the foot of the giant armor. I stepped forward and stomped on it, causing it to explode. After breaking free, the Chen clan took a step forward and charged towards the crowd. Brandishing his dragon spine saber, he slashed through the waves. Not a single person dared to come within 100 feet of me. All of them fell like weeds. His speed was so slow that it was impossible to see his figure clearly in the hazy night. The only thing that could be seen was the 2 scarlet lights floating in his eye sockets, dragging out 2 scarlet light ribbons. In the blink of an eye, I was behind a middle-aged man. This person roared and took out a small hammer. Leaping up, he used the momentum of his fall to smash the Chun family's head. That hammer contained the full strength of the other party, so it could be said that its power was extremely weak. Facing such a hammer, Xiangying just raised his hand and caught the falling hammer. With a boom, the dragon throne's figure bent and her knees slightly bent, neutralizing the impact. Her small hand gripped the hammer tightly, and she dragged the other party behind her. Her other left hand, which was holding the dragon spine blade, flipped over and smashed the other party's chest heavily with the hilt. With a crack, it seemed that many of the other party's ribs were broken. The middle-aged woman spat out a mouthful of blood, and her aura instantly weakened. The Chun family threw away the small hammer in my hand and raised his hand to grab my head, pulling me behind him. A cold voice came from the dragon throne. "What the hell is their Ling Qi doing?" That middle-aged woman was the head of the Ling Qi clan, Xiangying Huan. Just now, when I was hiding outside and giving orders, the Chun family had already seen through my position. In his perception, this person was the first Xiangying Huan left in the Ling Qi clan. The other Xiangying Huan cultivators were either killed by me, or by the myriad Devil Ridge and Shao Xinghe. Even the surviving Ling Qi clan cultivators were 80% of the original Ling Qi clan. The Chun family didn't kill me because I felt that today's matter was too strange. Not only did the Ling Qi clan inexplicably attack us in secret, they even gathered their entire clan to besiege us. I originally thought that the Ling Qi clan was a chess piece placed by the True Lake realm, and wanted to use this opportunity to eliminate me. But after this small battle, I felt that it was too similar. That was because spiritual energy and the other cultivators were far too fearful of death. It was as if there was someone who didn't care about their own life and death. Even when I wore the dragon throne, I only managed to shock Xiangying and the other cultivators at the start. Before that, I didn't feel any fear at all. Even if the Ling Qi clan was a spy placed by the True Lake realm, it was only a small portion of them. It could be said that all of the Ling Qi clan cultivators were in the True Lake realm. If that was the case, the news would have been leaked long ago. So the Chun family wanted to understand why the Ling Qi clan was so cowardly. Did we know that there would be no consequences for attacking the disciplinary hall? Since we wanted to kill Li Baxian, we naturally wanted to bring him back to Grand Sky City for interrogation. No matter what, we had to get to the bottom of today's matter. Otherwise, we would definitely encounter a similar attack the last time. As expected of the person I chose, Li Baxian suddenly spoke. "What?" the Chun family asked, but he didn't get any response. He only heard a loud bang from Li Baxian's head. Then Li Baxian's neck tilted and he started breathing. I died just like that. Xiangying even knew how I died, because I felt that Li Baxian didn't activate Chen Lai at all. Chi chi chi. Similar sounds came continuously from the side. "Capture him alive!" The Chun family shouted angrily and turned to grab a nearby Ling Qi clan cultivator. But just as he grabbed him, he died on the spot. Corpses fell to the ground one by one. The surviving Ling Qi clan cultivators all fell to the ground. The Chun family was dumbfounded. The Wanmo Ridge people who survived the calamity were also dumbfounded. Chapter 991. Blood soared into the sky and rivers of blood flowed. In the square outside the Chun family's guest hall, broken corpses could be seen everywhere, especially at the place where Lu Yi was surrounded and at the entrance of the guest hall. The corpses in these two places were piled up into small mountains. The Chun clan was a sixth-rank clan. Although there weren't many cultivators in the clan, there were still quite a number of them. During the battle, there were still a steady stream of cultivators rushing over from the direction of the Tianji Palace. All in all, there were at least several hundred cultivators. However, at this moment these hundreds of people had lost their lives here. 70% of them died in the fierce battle, and the last 30% died mysteriously. The dark clouds in the sky dispersed, and the moonlight tilted. Shao Xinghe and the others stepped out of the guest hall and looked at the hellish scene in front of them. They all felt a chill in their hearts. It wasn't that they hadn't seen dead people before, But the way the cultivators of the Chun family died was too strange. No one knew how they died. Moreover, in the battle, the fearless style of the Chun family members was also puzzling. The many figures that came one after another didn't feel like they were living people, but beasts that had lost their minds. There was a cracking sound and everyone looked up. Under the moonlight, the 3-meter-tall figure suddenly collapsed, turning back into small fragments and turning back into a round ball the size of a baby's head. Lu Yi raised his hand and grabbed it. He landed lightly on the ground and staggered a little. Lin Yinxiu hurried forward to support him. Seeing his pale face, she asked with concern, "Captain, are you okay?" Chen Yinxiu shook his head. "It's not a small problem, but it consumed a lot of energy. Using the Dragon Emperor's trump card consumes a lot of energy. Moreover, in the fierce battle I also suffered some internal injuries. Ordinary attacks can't break through the Dragon Emperor's defense, so naturally they can't do any damage to me. However, the shock from these attacks can't be resolved by the Dragon Emperor. It's fine if it happens once or twice, but it can't take it too much. Especially when I caught Xiaoxinghe's first strike. I felt as if the bones in my hand had cracked from the impact of the hammer. That's why I didn't use the Dragon Emperor the next time I was forced into a corner by Lu Yuemei. Lu Yuemei might have a way to break through the defense of the Dragon Emperor, but she can't kill me. Take a rest. They will investigate the cause of death of these people." As Chunjia spoke, he sat down cross-legged and took out a small handful of spirit pills from his storage bag and stuffed them into his mouth. Then he held a spirit stone in each hand and activated the power of his talent tree to absorb them. Jinya couldn't quickly replenish her energy, but she needed to quickly recover the stamina and mental power she had expended while wearing the dragon throne. Chan Tianchue quietly stayed by my side to protect me. Jinya Mei and the others split into groups of 2 and investigated the cause of death of these people, according to the Chang clan's instructions. Today's matter had a lot of confusing points, and there were not many things that made people want to understand. After a round of investigation, he didn't find anything useful. He only knew that the first batch of people who died, including Jinya Mei, seemed to have no strength to explode in their brains. Their brains exploded into a mass of paste, and they died instantly. While Xiang Donglu and the others were busy, the Chun family was pondering over Xiaoxinghe's words before he died. I heard those words so clearly. Perhaps it was because Xiaoxinghe didn't mention the time, but I vaguely heard something about someone he fancied. Who likes who? If it was me, who likes me? What did it have to do with Ling Qi's matter today? While thinking, the Chun family suddenly looked up into the sky and saw a streak of light quickly flying over. It landed behind him and revealed the figure of a middle-aged woman. The group immediately rushed to Jinya Mei's side and looked over cautiously. The Chun family slowly got up and pressed the mountain plate blade at his waist. The newcomer's gaze swept over. Seeing the tragic situation here, her eyes narrowed. Seeing the Chun family's vigilance, she picked up the guard token at her waist. "You are the head of the law division, Jinya Mei. Which team are they from?" Only then did everyone understand that the reinforcements had arrived. Almost at the same time that Ling Qi's side took action, the Chun family instructed Jinya Mei to send a message for reinforcements. Chun Tianchue also successfully sent the message. Calculating the time, the other side hadn't been too slow. Judging from the Lu Yi waves that the other side displayed, that divine ocean realm cultivator was a Lin Yinxiu. Only without Lin Yinxiu would not be qualified to be the head of the law division. After confirming that the newcomer was one of their own, everyone relaxed. The main reason was that the Ling Qi had caused them to be overly cautious. After confirming the newcomer's identity, no one could guarantee whether the other party was good or evil. Even at this moment, everyone was still vigilant. Fourth squad of the Law Enforcement Hall. The Chun family greets the head of the Law Enforcement Hall. Jinya Mei showed her guard token and saluted. Jinya Mei glanced at me, then looked to the side. Those people, were they the ones who killed them? Some of them. What happened? Jinya Mei asked in a low voice. Although I came to rescue them after receiving the news, I didn't expect to see such a scene. From what I can sense, apart from some mortals living in the 10 young lords' residences, anyone without a cultivation base has already lost their lives. In one night, Jin Yamei's family was almost wiped out. The Mi Mountain spiritual force would also become history. The Chun family explained all the complicated things that happened after that. Jin Yamei frowned as she listened, because the Chun family's story had too many loopholes. Other things could be mentioned, but the part about why the Lingqi family would tamper with the tea made sense. Jin Yamei and the others were from the law enforcement hall, so how could the Lingqi family and 8th rank family know the consequences of doing that? Before the matter was exposed, it was even more reasonable for the family to besiege them. I didn't have much interaction with the Lingqi family, but I knew about Xiao Xinghe. This person could become the head of the Lingqi family, and he wasn't a 4th order true lake realm cultivator, so he was naturally a special person. How could such a person be so clear-headed? The Chun family spoke very slowly. After all, the matter wasn't simple, but there were too few things that made sense. After listening, the Spirit Sea Realm cultivator was silent for a long time. Then he said, "The sect exterminating leaf, the name is false. It's true that hearing 100 times is the same as seeing once." The sect exterminating leaf title came from when the Chun family was still in the Spirit Stream battlefield. At that time, I had only destroyed the sects of these 10,000 demons' rich forces. I had really done something like exterminating an entire sect, so that title wasn't an exaggeration. But today it was finally confirmed. I hope what he said is true. The Spirit Sea Realm cultivator looked at the Chun family thoughtlessly. The Chun family didn't notice. "Does this little one believe you?" Jin Yamei said with a frown. "Before they return to Grand Sky City, this little one hasn't made a decision yet, so it's not up to you to comment. You just received orders to come and rescue them." The Chun family was silent for a while, and didn't say anything more. There were too few suspicious points about today's matter, so it was no wonder that the Spirit Sea Realm cultivator had doubts. Since they are all unwell, then it's none of your business. They will clean up this place. The Spirit Sea Realm cultivator was talking, but suddenly, he didn't notice something and looked up in a certain direction. Immediately he frowned and flew up into the sky, flying in that direction. My sudden actions caused the Chun family and the others to be at a loss. No one knew what I had discovered. This direction. Is it the direction of the fog cliff? Feng Yuechan didn't think much of it. At that moment, there was suddenly no violent fluctuation of leaves coming from this direction. Jinya and the others all raised their heads to look in that direction, only to see that in the night sky, there was a burst of dazzling light that illuminated the horizon. Two similar auras were madly clashing against each other. "I've met an enemy." Xiang Donglu frowned. One of the two people fighting here was obviously a Spirit Sea Realm cultivator who had just rushed over. As for who the other person was, there was no way to know. But judging from the aura of the two, one was obviously weaker and the other was slightly stronger. As for which one was weaker and which one was stronger, everyone could tell from such a long distance. Only the Chun family, who hadn't given birth to divine sense, had a thick layer of worry between their eyebrows. Because I sensed that the one with the stronger aura was Jin Yamei. In other words, the person who was fighting with Jin Yamei was slightly stronger than me. "How dare you!" An angry shout came from the direction of the fog cliff, followed by an exclamation that stopped abruptly. The small battle was over. From the time Jin Yamei rushed over to fight with this unknown enemy, it had been more than 80 breaths. Jin Yamei's heart sank. She really understood what was going on tonight. All kinds of strange things happened one after another. Suddenly, I didn't feel like I was being pulled into a torrent. I had a premonition that nothing small was going to happen. A stream of light quickly flew over from the fog cliff, carrying the brilliant aura that belonged to a minor cultivator like Lin Inxiu. Before this unknown Lin Inxiu had finished dealing with the Spirit Sea Realm cultivator, she was flying over. The Chun family and the others all felt their scalps tingle. They instantly got into a fighting stance. Although they knew that the minor cultivator might be a match for a minor cultivator like Lin Inxiu, no one was willing to sit still and wait for death. Jin Yamei even took out the dragon throne. When I activated the dragon throne, the figure that was rushing over from the fog cliff flew over our heads. In that instant, the Chun family used all of his eyesight and vaguely saw an enchanting figure in the stream of light. It was a man. When the man flew over our heads, the Chun family clearly saw that you glanced up, but you didn't seem to have any intention of stopping. You just left like that. The instant our eyes met, the Chun family broke out in a cold sweat. Because at that moment, I vaguely saw a meaningful look flash through the man's eyes. 10 breaths ago there was a long breath. Everyone who had survived before the calamity had a grave expression. Why did he kill you? Chun Tianchue asked. If the man had wanted to kill us, the team would have been able to block him. Even if the Chun family wore the dragon throne, it would have been fine. At that time, only if I didn't activate the golden body medallion would they be able to survive. As for the others, they would definitely die. Maybe it's dandruff. Jean Yamei looked at the saber in her hand and felt a sense of power in her heart. Although he was happy that he managed to keep his life, being looked down upon like that made him feel a little depressed. Let's go. The Chun family shouted and rushed towards the fog cliff. No matter what, I had to investigate the life and death of a spirit sea realm cultivator. After all, I was here to help. You're tuning into the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.